Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. You know the deal. Business side first. Today's episode is brought to you by Black Rifle Coffee. And if you listen to the podcast, that should be no surprise because they are the sole sponsor of all the episodes. What I'll say is this. This is coming out mid-October, maybe slightly past halfway. Guess what's around the corner? Yeah, holiday season. I actually saw a store the other day that already had Christmas decorations up, and my first thought was, fuck you. All right? It used to be after Thanksgiving only. Damn. Like, can we just take it easy for a little bit? Having said that, you know what a great stocking stuffer and gift may be? My personal suggestion here, if you have someone in your life who loves coffee, is I would join the Coffee Club subscription as part of Black Rifle because you can get them really cool stuff. It can be delivered. You could have you could join the ECS club as well, which I think has limited space available, but it doesn't matter. Coffee cups, stuff to make coffee with. All I'm saying is they are great holiday gift ideas. And if you're like me, sometimes you forget that the holidays are right around the corner and you start a little bit late, and that just sucks. So start a little bit early. Where can you start? blackriflecoffee.com. And that's it on the business side of the house. My guest today is John Spencer. He reached out to me at this point, man, well over probably 2 months ago. Actually, I believe his publicist reached out to me. He is an author of the book Connected Soldiers, Life, Leadership, and Social Connections in Modern War. But on top of that, though, he is an internationally recognized expert and advisor on urban warfare and other military-related topics. And our email exchange was talking a lot about Ukraine and what's going on in Ukraine, the conflict there between Ukraine and Russia, and really how it kind of ties in the rest of the world as well. He's currently serving as the chair of urban warfare studies with the Madison Policy Forum. He talks about that. Recently served as the chair of urban warfare studies at the Modern War Institute at West Point, co-director of the Urban Warfare Project, and he is also the host of the Urban Warfare Project podcast. Served as a colonel in the California State Guard with assignments to the 40th Infantry Division, California Army National Guard as director and as the director of urban warfare training. Spent over 25 years in active Army service. It's a lot. He knows a lot. Fascinating conversation. So let's get into it. Episode number 255 with John Spencer. Enjoy.
Okay, got the red smoke. Gun run, north or south, west of the smoke, west of the smoke. Okay, copy, west of the smoke. I'm looking at danger close now. Come on with it, baby, give it to me, I need it. You're cleared hot. Copy, cleared hot.
For those people who are choosing to watch this, pop off that left ear cup of that headset. Show everybody what you're talking about. Yeah, it's good. Okay.
So that's half an ear gone.
That's like an eighth of an ear. Let's not church that shit up, okay?
Well, it sure got cut down over the years. That's what happens when you mount somebody. You control their arms, but your head on head, not head on chest.
And it just was abrasion?
No, I got my ear bit off in a fight.
Oh, an actual fight.
A real.
I thought we were talking about just jiu-jitsu on the mats. I'm like, son of a bitch, your training partners are horrendous. What gym do you go to? Because I'm never going.
That's right. No, I wear headgear now.
Okay. So you were mounted.
Yes.
You had arm control.
Yes.
I'm actually really glad that you are bringing this up. Was it with Greg Anderson, Michael, that we were talking about how people inside of a jiu-jitsu gym, like we have these invisible rules that we both agree to play by, and that you step out on the street and they will they'll Mike Tyson your ear. Yeah.
And this is before, of course, when I went back to the barracks, and throughout my rest of my career, it's been Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
This happened before that.
Okay, so an early adopter.
Yes.
So, okay, you're in mount, you have arm control,
Yeah.
and my man just rotates his head and takes a bite of whatever he could get. You're lucky it actually wasn't like your cheek or something like that.
Correct. I mean, I'd already had thumbs in the eyes. This is a legit fight to the death, at least what I thought it was.
We might as well start at the beginning.
Let's start at the beginning.
Is there alcohol involved?
So this is, people think. So you have to shorten the story just for people like bar fight. Oh, you were drinking, you're in a bar fight.
Yeah.
I was 19, I think. I was at an 18 and up club, but actually, to tell the story, I had to go back a day before that. So I'm in 2nd Battalion, 75th Ranger Regiment, 1996, right when jiu-jitsu basically hit the U.S. Army, UFC 1,
Yep.
Hoist Gracie, and others came to 275 where it all started for us, for the U.S., for the kind of...
Those guys came themselves.
Yes.
You lucky bastards.
Yeah. So I got to meet him in, what was that, like April 96, so after UFC 1, so big name, big personality.
I just met him recently at a SIG shooting event,
Did you
actually.
really?
One of the nicest guys ever.
Yeah.
Loves him some guns.
Oh, really?
Oh, he loves guns. That's why he was up there.
Oh.
I think his team actually won, too.
Wow.
I suspect they gave it to him. I mean, there was some celebrities on that team. I think somebody was up there with a little pencil.
That's right.
That's what I like to say. We came in third, which leads me to believe that they cheated and had 2 teams before us. They just fudged the score a little bit.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's coming to visit you guys at the regiment.
Yep. So back then, Matt Larson, who's Jocko just talked about him recently, he's what we call him the godfather of modern armed combatives, had studied many systems, had gone to the Gracie camp in California, had come back. They came up. I'm a non-tab for us. That means had not been to Ranger school, new soldier, circle of death, just learning the basics of combatives, basics of, achieve the clinch, take down, achieve a mount, move from there.
What is this circle of death you speak of? Is that literally that like wood-chipped circular arena that you guys beat the fuck out of each other in?
That is one. So I was a Ranger instructor later in my career. So there is that.
Because those make great highlight reels on YouTube.
Yeah, and that's literally the goal, is just don't get hurt in
Yeah.
that ring. And back then in the beginning, before even a program of combatives was started, it was literally, let's teach you some stuff. Okay, now form a giant circle on this grass field, and let's start going at it. And you call it the circle of death because it would just rotate, like inner circle would rotate, next guy. Or, which is what Matt is really big on, this is about, our combatives kind of theory was it's about courage and facing somebody. So we put one person in the middle and then just call them out, right?
Yeah.
And it's a public shaming and all this stuff. But it was a real deal, and I've since written about that fight that I got into. So I was at a club, an 18 and up club. I was a young 275 soldier. We all went out together in Kent, Washington. After the club closed, people would go to civilian after parties. I was at a bonfire party with me and a Ranger buddy. You don't go anywhere without somebody else. And then lights out. I don't remember anything. I got knocked out by a baseball bat.
Awesome.
Yeah. My buddy actually got the worst of the deal because he came over and when they saw what had happened to me, and he got held down and just demolished with cowboy boots into the face and all this stuff.
Is there a reason why they jumped you guys?
So this is ages ago. I was talking to a group of females, had my back to the fire.
Classic mistake.
Classic. Situational awareness. But this guy named Pepper thought I was talking to his girls. So they wake me up. My friends just destroyed, and they put us in the car and go, you guys should probably leave. And all I asked was, who did this? And I got a name. Drive all the way back, which is a good 45, 70-minute drive back to Fort Lewis, Washington, where 275 is.
Fully concussed. Probably everybody's bleeding all over the place.
Yeah, I went to the hospital.
Yeah.
Got stitches in my head. I don't know what time it is at this point. Go back to the barracks. And of course, everybody wants to know the story. There's only 2 of us. Tell the entire platoon the story. So this is the young man, where things start to go wrong, right? So this isn't the knife in Houston.
Yeah.
Single second mistake. This is a series of.
It's Tucson.
Yeah.
Close enough.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Oh, so this is my moment. This is my Tucson moment. So I, being young and dumb and just following the group, says, okay, we're going to go back up. So we go back up with 2 cars full of Ranger Regiment.
Same day. This is the next day.
Next night.
Okay.
Right? Because that club would be up and running that night. It was from, it was the party from the club. Drive with 2 carloads full of Rangers. Back then we had, like Mohawks, and it's pretty hard to not notice who we are. Walk into the club like Reservoir Dogs. We'll look around for Pepper. I don't know who I'm looking for. And they said, somebody came up to me and goes, are you looking for this person? I said, yes. He goes, he'll meet you in the alley down the street. Don't bring your friends or we'll bring ours.
Okay. Slightly gentlemanly.
Yeah, gentlemen. So, of course, I walked down the street with all my friends.
Yeah.
So now it's literally like Reservoir Dogs. So if you can imagine a dark alley with breast-to-breast Rangers walking down the street, entering an arena of people. Like, what am I doing at this point? Like, So my mind just starts going crazy. All the chemicals,
Yeah.
fear
Yep.
is releasing into me. In the middle of this arena of people is one guy standing in the middle of it. Somebody tells me to take my shirt off. I take my shirt off back then. This is all kid stuff. I'm 18, 19 at this time. Walk into the arena and just start throwing. And I was scared to death. And this is the point of I had learned like 3 moves in jiu-jitsu. I was a young kid. I didn't know anything about fighting. So all my chemicals were just flaring. I use it as a great analogy as to why we train so much, because I want you to fight in combat without that overload of physiological, thinking through it, anything. I just want you to react. So I did what I thought I could do, which is I closed the distance, achieved a clinch, took him down. At that point, we're in the, and I'm not actually joking about this, in the alley, the side of the alley in knee deep water, on the bank of the, yeah, I know the story just gets worse. So now we fall into the gully. Now I'm on top of him. I got mounts, and something happened, and I didn't feel a thing. I don't even know if I felt him biting into it.
Really?
No, I didn't feel a thing. I mean, this is how many, adrenaline.
Yeah, you're in full blast.
It's full blast. That happens, and at some point, I get him in a guillotine choke, and I choke him until he
mount.
From mount.
Oh, that's gonna be hard on the neck.
Yes. So we call it a crucifix, right?
Yeah.
But it was a full guillotine.
Crucifix is when you got both of their arms essentially. It looked like a T.
So from the mount, I can instead of coming around to do a guillotine, I can come around.
Yep.
And then sit out. You used to call it a crucifix.
Yep.
It's a neck crank, right?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't let you do it in competition.
It's bullshit.
Yeah.
Everything should be allowed in competition.
So I choke him till he's out. That's it. And everybody now around this whole, there's like at least 50 people around us. So he's done. I didn't know my ear was gone. I stand up, and my friend goes, "Your ear looks pretty bad." Hands me back my shirt. I put my shirt on my ear. Cops start showing at this point. Get in the car, start driving. Take the visor down. My ear's gone.
Was it in his mouth?
Who knows? He could have swallowed it.
I have so many questions about where that piece ended up.
Yep.
I want to know, actually.
I went straight to the hospital.
You need to. Human mouths are disgusting. You're lucky it didn't get infected.
No, I was out for days.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So one, pain came. I didn't feel any pain in the fight, but immense pain came when they tried to clean that ear out.
Ooh.
And started scrubbing at it. Because now you have cartilage just sticking out without...
Yeah, what do they call that? It's, I think it starts with a D. Whatever it is, it's not great. Yeah, it's the same thing when you get road rash.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, here's the steel wool.
That's right.
Here's the brush. Debride or something like that. Yeah, they get in there.
So they actually come in with cameras to take photos of my ears. Like, they're so cool in the ER at this point. It's so cool. And then the MP comes. The military policeman comes forward to the report. And that's where where my career changed at that time.
What ended up happening?
So I was kicked out of Ranger Regiment.
Really?
Yep.
Huh.
So I was released.
Probably more so because you went back the second day.
So Stanley McChrystal is a battalion commander at this point, who later is J.
Yeah, I was going to say probably colonel maybe.
Yeah, and he blurbs the book for me.
Yeah.
I didn't tell him.
Of course not. That's the move. Don't tell him that, hey, we've actually encountered each other before. You were on one side of the desk. I was standing in my Class A uniforms on the other.
But of course I said we served together. We were he was my he was my commander, sir. We served together. So he read the book and had amazing, great things to say about it. I was released by paper, one, for going back. Even though I told my entire chain of command, they're like, drive on, Ranger, do it.
Yeah.
I was released because I was on the medical profile, because I couldn't wear a helmet for like 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It took forever for that ear to heal. And it was really weird. You had to attach seaweed to it. It was so crazy.
Huh.
It took a good, and then they had to cut away more of it, like you said.
The human mouth is like bites from human beings. I don't want to get bit by anything, but being bit by a human is really, really high on the list of things I don't want to be bit by.
Yeah, no, it was horrible, and it won't close. So even if I roll now, so back to do I do jiu-jitsu? So I'd actually not quit. I just kind of like Jack Carr, I've done it throughout my military career, but because I knew I was coming here, I wasn't going to let you call me a jiu-jitsu quitter. So I started back up a couple months ago.
Good.
and I love it.
Shame is the best motivation that there is.
It
anyway.
is. But if I had to wear headgear, because if that cartilage is showing right now, and if it punches through more, that just means more they got to cut off.
They can't trim the cartilage back and like close. First off, I don't know if you know this. I'm not a doctor, so I'm just I'm
no.
spitballing
I heard you
ideas
talk about
here.
steroids. I think you're good.
I'm spitballing ideas here. I'm not saying that this couldn't be the cutting edge of medical technology and where we'll be in 2050, but it's like trim the cartilage back. I'm just thinking about making a pie here. I'm like, you got to shove all this stuffing inside and then you seal up the edge.
So I was laid out. I have pictures of the hospital. I don't remember any of it because they actually like, the infections possibility of at this time of age or anything that'd be transferred through the saliva. They asked me, Ranger, do you want to have a surgery to fix this, where they cut your rib cage out, they sew some of it on your stomach, and they cut the other one and they try to reform it?
Are you serious?
Yes, absolutely. They gave me that
Holy cow.
option to do reconstructive surgery on it, and I said, of course not. I have to get back to my unit.
Yeah.
Because I thought I had a chance of staying in. Like, this is a part about like if you would have lost your Budweiser because of the event.
For real, as opposed to them just not letting me wear it. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. But they said, so I said no. I had to go to I had a Ranger school slot at that point. Like, I got to get back to my unit. I can't do that.
Yeah.
Went back to my unit, and my fate was undetermined, and they made a decision that medically, and you come back when you're done. As they tell people if they kick them out for that. Not many people do, but had that not happened in my life, I wouldn't be sitting here.
Yeah. Same with the incident in Tucson. Well, I mean, I might be sitting here, but I feel like I would have made a lot of bad choices much deeper into my military service. Like I'm actually really fortunate that happened when it did.
Yeah.
In hindsight.
Yeah.
When it did happen, and standing at my first executive officer mast followed by a captain's mast was not the best experience.
Yeah. I mean, literally, it changed. There should be a lot of lessons there from, just prefrontal cortex, making decisions, all this stuff. But the lesson was, I thought my life was over. Like, I had wedded my identity to being a member of the Ranger Regiment so hardly. I like went into depression, like all this stuff. But I was still in the Army, and I actually was sitting in Ranger school 6 months later after that, which is great because in the medical checks, I could go, I can't feel my ear. And it always got a laugh. Because I went through in the winter, like they had to do these checks on your all your extremities. I can't feel my ear, doc, and he loved it.
Yeah, I can see that. All right, so you go through Ranger School. I'm assuming you successfully make it through. Where'd your career take you from there? Or actually, why'd you even want to join the Army in the first place?
Yeah, so I grew up without a dad, mom working 3 jobs, 3 kids.
What part of the U.S.?
Indiana, small town Indiana. I wouldn't say suburbs, but Richmond, Indiana.
Okay.
I like you, well, not like you, but I joined the delay entry program at like 16.
Yeah.
Because I was a younger kid going into school, but there was really nothing else I could do. Like there was no college option in my family. It was really what was to do. And I of course watched the videos, and I wanted to be a Ranger. So I had this similar story like a lot of your guests of. The recruiter says, "Oh, I know you want to be a Ranger, but I have this 11 X-ray unassigned airborne." That's the same thing.
Yeah, it's actually a little bit better. Let me tell you about all these other things that aren't actually going to happen after you sign on the dotted line and get on a school bus to go to boot camp.
So I'd watched the videos. I wanted to be a Ranger, all that stuff. Joined, now I'm 16, graduate high school, 17. I'm in infantry basic training, airborne school. There's nobody saying, hey, who wants to be a Ranger? And thank God they didn't, because I had grown up with a mom, 2 sisters, no father figure in my entire life. Didn't play a day of sports.
Really?
Not a day. Nothing. I had no male figure in my life, my entire upbringing.
You didn't have male friends or, social connections that way, get to spend time around there?
We moved a lot.
Yeah.
At one point, we were homeless. I didn't even know it. We were living in my uncle's attic. I didn't know that. It was basically we were homeless. She couldn't cut it. Stories of heating the bath water on the stove.
Yeah.
Standing in line for government cheese. That's a thing in Indiana. We stood in line for a block of cheese. It's just reality of it. It's who I am today, and it's why being a father is my number one thing in life.
Yeah.
Because I won't let that, and I understand too, developmentally. But I tell people I was re-raised in the military, and I honestly believe it. Like I was taught how to eat. Before I went into the military, I was eating 5 candy bars that was my dinner at a grocery store. So I was re-raised in the military. And had I gone from basic AIT airborne school to the Ranger Indoctrination program, I wouldn't have made it a couple of days. So I didn't, nobody even asked. I didn't care. I went to my first duty station, which was Panama City, Panama. There's a airborne unit that used to be down there.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
The first of the 508th, which actually I was a part of like multiple times in my career, but it was actually on the Howard Air Force Base. So just a mind-blowing one, kid out of Indiana gets sent to Panama.
A little culture shock.
Yeah, a little
sure.
culture shock. Gets sent straight into the jungle, straight into jungle operations at night. Have 20 static line jumps in the first 8 months of my Army career. But I also started to be developed. I had such good leaders. I was the guy who thought you could run a PT by running the straightaways and walking the curbs. Somehow, somebody taught me that in high school. So in the basic training, that's what I was doing. But this is it's a fact.
I mean, it's a valid tactic, I guess, depending on what it is you're trying to accomplish.
You meet the time standard. But
yeah.
So this is, I think it's a great example of this, the Army, especially the conventional, you get a wide variety of people from all walks of backgrounds and lives and society. I had to be reshaped. So my squad leaders were running me at night with a little motivation, trying to shape me into a soldier. So my time didn't end at basic and AIT. I joined this fairly rigorous unit, an airborne infantry unit in Panama. So I got put to the test and I developed.
I think it's actually probably a more common story than you may think.
Yeah.
It's a melting pot for sure. So my dad served in the Navy in the Vietnam era, and he was talking about serving with people who were literally getting their first pair of shoes when they showed up at boot camp. And it wasn't that, not that that's extreme. It just means that people are coming from a variety of different socioeconomic places, which I think is the beauty
It is.
of that. And yeah, I mean, what a great place to get those formative figures in your life, because you're still, I mean, you're not as early as I would want that to happen, but you're still in the story arc of an adult life based off life expectancy. You're still doing pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, a guy taught me how to shave in basic training.
Yeah,
these are the level of things I had to learn just to grow to be an adult.
Yeah,
and when we all come into the military with an idea of what it's going to be like.
I was going to ask you. So you joined in what, 95?
93.
93. What was the information available about Rangers in 93? Like, what were they saying?
Yeah, so it was a video, like a commercial you'd see today in the recruiter station on. It wasn't even DVDs. It was like laser disc.
Oh yeah.
I would go
maybe Blu-ray. You don't even know.
I don't know. And they had Rangers and Special Forces. So I would go in there as a 16-year-old kid and watch these videos. I'm like, oh, I want to be that.
Yeah. What were they doing? Just like a variety, little snippets of unconventional warfare,
like coming out of the swamp.
Oh
Green.
The shit you probably never did a single time in your career for real. Trained on it a bunch. It's like, that actually we're done with that now.
But ideals of masculinity, ideals of service, heroes, people, identity, all that stuff. I drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you probably were a model recruit for them because you were so malleable to the information that they're putting out.
Yep. Although so this is the question about physical, like what do we need our soldiers to be? We need them to be physically fit. There's so much more to it.
Much like people want to talk about buds, and they think it's extremely it's all physical, and which is true. There's a physical component to it, but the mental component, the grind, the grading on you is far more difficult than the actual pain or soreness.
I think I really liked your last episode about the challenge of buds pops
with the drug use. Yeah.
As a former Ranger instructor, I know like Ranger School, it has we call it RAP week, or a week of kind of a physical assessments and things like that. It has nothing to do with this.
RASP is what they call it, right?
No, that's for Ranger Regiment.
See, that's what I get for saying Army shit.
This is just the 1 week about like all the testing. It's the first week of Ranger School, and it's where we, like buds, lose all of our most people. Yeah. But Ranger School isn't a physical test. Like there's this physical minimal requirement, but even the evolutions of physical training are. I want to expose your character, and I want to expose your heart. So just like you, if people quit. That was something that I came into the military somehow, some way, without the ability to do. Yeah. Like I would, in my Ranger School experience, again, a young private just trying to be the gray man, I thought I was going to die. I'm like, okay, this is where I die. Quitting wasn't one of my options. In Ranger School, it's just this beautiful experience, especially the sleep deprivation and food deprivation.
I was going to say, let's not leave out the starvation diet.
Yeah. That you would be surprised, and I've never heard anybody talk about on the show how many people expose their character in the course when put under those stresses of being a child thief.
Well, that's the point of the curriculum.
Yep.
Same thing as buds.
Okay.
We do diving tests and runs on the beach and swims in the ocean and obstacle courses, and we're not actually even testing for any of that shit. That's the minimum baseline standard that you have to make from a physiological perspective. Almost everything else, like Hell Week, is you accomplish exactly and precisely nothing. Like there's actually no goal that we put in front of the student that means anything. We're just trying to get them super tired, super hungry, super cold, and then present them with the opportunity to show us who they actually are. Absolutely. And a lot of the time that presents itself with them raising their hand going, fuck this. And that last Friday, the one that came out yesterday, it's an interesting one. They've been gaming the system forever, and everybody wants to look at the instructors of the curriculum. Like, let's look at the candidates for the love of God.
And I think you're right about presenting people with different stimuli based on who they were decades before that. Like it matters. Like me, I had no stimulus, so I'm like this molded clay. But there are limitations, right? In kind of regular Army basic training, the biggest kind of attrition event is stress fractures. Just people who haven't been
more active than they've ever been.
Haven't been physical.
For people who look at only the throughput and the number coming out the other end, and they're willing to modify things to include lowering standards, it's a bad call in my mind. Yeah.
And we just actually, you didn't cover, but the Ranger School just had some deaths as well.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah, but it was trees falling on them.
Oh, they out storm?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I bet you those weren't the first deaths in Ranger School.
No, we actually had another one while I was right before I joined Ranger Regiment. There was an event that was really one of those events that changes the entire course, where 4 guys died of hypothermia in the Florida phase. So that's what incorporated the captains, because before then, so I went to be a Ranger instructor as a captain, because that's this safety net that you talk about too, that even students don't understand that there's this
they have no idea.
Massive safety net over everything. Even when they think like, these dudes are going to let me die, there's the checks, the core temperature checks, all these things. When those soldiers died in the early 90s, they incorporated this captain into every platoon as kind of the officer oversight of safety.
I think it's fair to say, as an instructor, looking back at it, I would have let them die. Meaning I'm not there to pull them out when I think they've had too much.
Yeah.
The course is there to push them to their absolute limit and beyond it. And when they've had enough, they raise their hand and they say, hey, I can't do this anymore. Now, I'm not going to let you have like a fucking heart attack or drown or anything like that, but it's you in a battle with yourself. And it's not for me to say, hey, you've had enough. So you're supposed to feel like you're going to die.
Yep.
You're supposed to think that you're going to die. It's like, what are you going to do, though, when I give you a task and a time requirement and you feel that way?
Yep.
Are you going to come apart, or are you going to do it? Because we're looking for the people who can control all that other shit and then successfully complete the mission. Yep. So,
this situation was a little, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
This situation, they kind of got lost and got separated.
And that's where, behind the scenes that the students should never see. It's like, we put a fucking air tag in their rucksack. There's solutions to that so you can have kind of positive control. There's kind of the same issue at Buds, and I'll be honest with you, I'm surprised there hasn't been a catastrophic incident, because in Hell Week, they're out there rowing around in their boats. Let me just tell you who's not getting in the water with them. That would be me as the instructor. But they have chem lights and stuff on, and there's a vehicle ratio, and there's as going back as an instructor, there's 3-ring binders of every evolution. What's safety briefing? What are we trying to accomplish? What are we going to brief the students? What's the student to instructor ratio? And the more dangerous it becomes, there's evolutions, I think, in Buds are like a 10-to-1, and then pool comp, the test I administered, was a 1-to-1. Wow. Like, it's just straight there, you and the student, because, as the risk comes up, the attention level is going to come up. So, if somebody were to ever, and I don't want this to happen, but, drowns out in the ocean, or a boat crew gets annihilated and it takes them a while to figure out, they're going to have to look at that, and maybe there's a passive way that they can keep track of where everybody is.
Yeah. What interesting about Ranger School is that the sleep deprivation, going back as an instructor, you experienced it, but until you get to watch it, which creates a lot of humor in your daily life, of course.
Yes.
But when a dude will wake up in the middle of the night, like all the safety things are in place, but that dude woke up not knowing he was asleep and just walked off.
Yeah. Yeah, towards the end of Hell Week, by about Wednesday afternoon, you're keeping a pretty close eye on these kids. They are in complete and utter autopilot at that point. Yeah, they're let's just say they're not running around with scissors.
And every person reacts, like you said, to the stimulus differently. So
yeah.
In sleep, I was a sleeping ranger. Like the chow didn't bother me as much, but if you laid me down, I was going to fall asleep.
Yeah.
There's no control.
I watch people sleeping standing up.
Fall down.
Sometimes they would actually just snooze standing up.
Oh, really?
And I don't know what's going on there or how that's possible. And they would like rock forward a little bit. And of course, as the instructor, I'm like, do it.
Yes.
Just a little bit more forward.
There's the TikTok game where they start to fall asleep and they fall a little bit, then they'll wake themselves up.
Yeah.
And then they'll fall a little bit more. I've seen people just keep on falling.
There was, I don't know if this is even allowed in training, but I did watch an instructor. So he'd have two students facing each other like Thursday. And he'd give them each a wooden handle of an oar. And he'd have them a little bit offset so that the handle could go about a foot over their head and they would just have to stand there with it. And he'd sit there and be like, okay, now close your eyes. And he would wait until they fall asleep and they'd smell. It's the best. I don't know what that says about me that I enjoyed it.
No, I mean,
but it's like, yeah. I mean, we have to make it through our day, people.
That's
so,
right.
You know, it's critical training. I'm not sure if you gave me a few minutes, I could think of something that we were teaching in that moment. But
right.
Yeah, care for your buddy more than yourself. I don't know, something like that.
Exactly.
So how'd the rest of the career take you? So you made it through?
So I just my whole career is like, where's Waldo? Amazing opportunities and diversity. So I went to Panama. The unit closed, which was really weird. We were ending in Panama. I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana, which is the armpit of the Army.
Of the world, I've heard, actually.
I've heard. It's the best job I've ever had in the worst location. So I got to be the opposing force, which...
OPFOR, yeah.
Yeah, the Marines don't have, but the U.S. Army has these brigades, entire brigades, over 4,000 people that train just to destroy any Army unit that comes their way.
Really?
Yes.
So you were literally training to be professional enemy?
Yes.
And so for people listening, maybe break it down a bit. So it's called OPFOR, Opposition Forces.
Yep.
As you go through training block, I'll go through the SEAL pipeline. It's like 18 months of training, but you'd go out to, there's a desert facility, and you do small unit tactics. And essentially, the cadre, they had a bunch of volunteers, and they had, towards the end, they started using like Hollywood pyrotechnic effects and like fake RPGs flying by. It was awesome. It was really cool. Role players that were dressed up, but those were all contracted. You're talking about an actual billet duty station where it's your job to master that role of the OPFOR?
Absolutely. There's only two. There's three. There's one overseas in Germany. So we have these big combat training centers for the U.S. Army, right? Big trains brigade-sized units, so 4,000 plus personnel go to either Fort Polk, Louisiana, Fort Irwin, California, out in the desert, or there's one in Germany. Mm-hmm. And there is no rotational opposing force. There is a unit, an entire brigade. In Louisiana, it's the 509th Parachute Infantry Regiment, and in California, it's the 11th Cavalry Regiment. And that is for 4 years. You just train as whatever doctrine, so Russian doctrine, whatever. You train to be opposing force. I've never learned so much about fieldcraft in my profession than I did as being the opposing force, hunting men.
Yeah.
Because in the swampy woods of Louisiana, we would go to the field for 14 days at a time, 10 times a year. So that's 14 iterations of packing your stuff on your back, heading into the woods, living like an enemy.
That's just under half a year, but it's 140 days.
I can't see how I would do it with the family.
Yeah.
But as a brand, at this point, I'd been in the Army 3 years. I was loving life.
Yeah, your fieldcraft skills are just going to go through the roof.
It was amazing. I learned a lot about poison ivy too.
For sure.
In what you have to say to get the shot, because there's a shot that'll clear.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a steroid shot that'll clear poison ivy in 48 hours, but you have to have it in danger of your eyes, your genitalia, and your throat. So you just tell the doc you have it on your balls, and he'd give you the shot, and it'd be gone.
Be like, Doc, my eyes and throat are burning, and my dick is on fire. I will take the shot now.
Yeah. So I was taking that, but just an amazing rotation. And I also, again, good leaders, had a leader who took me under his wing and taught me about developing myself despite the unit that I was in. Like you said, it's a bell curve of people. He set me on the path, and he's my best friend to this day. As my squad leader, set me on the path of always making myself better and being a student, because in the conventional Army, there's so many directions you can go, and it's always up. In the path set forward, you just have to be active. So I'm there for like a year and a half, and then I decided I still want to be a Ranger at this. So I put in my packet. Then I go to the Ranger Indoctrination program for Benning. I get assigned to 275. About a year later, I get my ear bit off. If you get kicked out of Ranger Regiment, you usually just go across the fence to it, which really hurts because you're
like a literal fence you go across
the fence to the regular Army unit that's on the other side of the fence, and you report to them.
That's not awesome.
That's not awesome. You don't go like away to like a different.
Yeah, that's actually worse.
Yes.
That you can see where you used to be working.
Yeah.
And they can also see you.
Absolutely. Re-enlist to go to Italy. So I went to Italy. There's an airborne unit there. Back then it was the 508th Infantry, which was the same one I was in Panama. I just reflagged to Italy. Spent 2 years in Italy, loving life, got jump master school, progressing up the ranks, right? E5, E6. Come back, I get assigned to Fort Benning, Georgia to the Infantry Mortar Leader course. So I'm teaching, progressing, go to college at night, get enough credits to apply to officer candidate school in 2001. So back then you had a system where you've got an associate's degree and had enough credits, you could apply to go to OCS. I know it's different than...
There's a variety of commissioning sources. Yeah. I happened to find one that fit my educational background,
That's right.
which was 0.
That's right. I love this story. I'm more like the Jocko. So you don't even have to have a degree. You just have to have enough credits.
Okay.
OCS. At this point, I was a E7. So E7 went to OCS, back down to private, loved it.
Yeah.
Yes, I'll do whatever you tell me to do. I'll be the best toilet scrubber in the world.
How long was OCS?
I think it's 14 weeks, 18 weeks.
And you come out of that a butter bar?
Yes.
Which is, for you guys, a first lieutenant?
No, second lieutenant.
God damn it.
Yeah.
Why can't you guys just all have the same fucking ranks?
I mean, I think we should all be like, you can just wear the rank that we want when we go to a meeting.
Situation dictates which rank you should wear.
That's
and
right.
I only did that very sparingly. Jocko likes to take very creative liberties on when I would do that. It was specific meetings at specific times.
No, it makes total sense with the. I grew up in the conventional Army.
Yeah,
so
you know the deal.
I
Go
know.
in there as a butter bar, and they're like, "Hey, fuck you,
Yes.
2 creams and a sugar."
So, this is all about status and power, right?
Yeah.
I had been an E7 at this point, so if I was a different kind of butter bar.
Yeah.
Not good or worse, but I had the things that people cared about in the
Unless
infantry
you're
world.
in your camis and
Yes.
all they see is the butter bar.
Yeah, you guys think that it's an advantage not to wear stuff, but sometimes it's an advantage to wear stuff. And we usually look at the shoulder and go, oh, no Ranger school? Because if you're an infantry officer, you either have a Ranger tab or you have a story.
Yeah.
Because every infantry officer has to go to Ranger school.
I did not know that.
Yes. The infantry officer basic course at Fort Benning, Georgia, they march an entire class of like 400, and they report to Ranger school. There is no choice. So either as an infantry officer, you have a story or you have a tab.
How's that look for your career trajectory if you don't make it through?
I wouldn't say it's a killer, but it definitely closes doors. Because like the unit that I was in, the 173rd in Italy, you can't go there unless you're a Ranger tab.
Yeah.
Which is actually kind of not right, because Ranger Regiment you can't go to without a. So this conventional unit thinks it's like a 4th Ranger Battalion, so it won't let people. But they're so small they can be selective with the kind of the assignment officer. So if you're an infantry officer that doesn't get a Ranger tab, it isn't the end of your career. You can go back, of course, unless you quit.
Yeah.
And then it takes a certain level of officer to get you to come back in.
Interesting. I was not aware of that requirement.
Yeah. Of what?
All the officers have to go through Ranger
Yes.
school. Yeah.
And then so this is a different experience as an instructor. On the first day at like 3:00 in the morning when you give them the PT test, there would be people that would literally fail on purpose because they're not allowed to say no, I don't want to go, but they can. If they fail an event, then they don't have to. And so it isn't like I wouldn't say it's a bad thing to do that, but a lot of people got, especially when I was there. So I was a Ranger instructor in 2005, the height of both Iraq, Afghanistan. So people were, I got to get to my unit. So these.
Oh, they just didn't want to, air quotes, waste their time
Correct.
there. Oh, gotcha.
They thought they didn't want to miss the chance.
If only they knew how many chances they would get.
Or they thought, my people, rightfully so. Like, I had so many conversations. Like, my soldiers need me, especially if somebody would fail. Because Ranger school, unlike Buds, will give you multiple times.
Buds will give you can go back, I think, up to 3 times.
Oh, really?
You're going to take some time off in between. If you quit, it's not going to come. If you quit on a Thursday, you're not coming back next month.
Yeah. No.
Probably a minimum of 12 months, and I think for most people it's 24. And the duty stations, that you're going to have available to you are probably not the ones that you joined the military for. It's not great.
As in Ranger School, they'll keep you in the course.
Really?
Yes. So they'll cycle you back or cycle you to the next next course. So I've seen grown men cry in boards because they're at the last phase, Florida, which is, technically, if you go straight through, it'd be 60 plus days.
Mm-hmm.
But they had recycled the first phase, recycled the second phase, and now they're in the third phase, and they're at the end, and they're in a board, and the commander at that phase gets to make a decision whether you start that phase again or you go all the way back to day 0. So,
my God.
Yeah, so I've seen grown men cry, and I would have too, because the commander would also do this to test the person. So if I offer you a day 0 restart, will you take it?
Yes. It's the only fucking answer.
It's the only answer. But if I've seen people be there 9 months.
Yeah.
It all depends on who's the commanders of all the regiment, the brigade, and the individual battalions. But that's a deep look into your soul on how bad you want it.
Yeah.
This is the advantage of being in places like a Ranger regiment, where if you don't get it, you're out of the unit that you identify with. So if a Ranger, back then when I got my earbit off, had I been in the school and you fail the course, then you're out.
Yeah.
Or like me, you have an assignment to Italy. Let's say an officer gets an assignment to Italy, goes through Ranger School and doesn't make it. He no longer has an assignment to Italy.
Yeah, there's a lot on the line there for sure.
Which gets you, once I expose that level of how much do you want it.
Yeah. It's a great question to ask somebody. If I would offer you a restart, like here's your choices. You're out of here or you're back to day 1.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know enough about Buzz, but there's so many ways that people can not progress in.
Really only 3.
Really?
DOR, which drop on request.
Okay.
Medical role and a performance role. But they'll give you one of each of those roles. The DOR is very final. You're not going to be like, take that back. It's like, no. You can take that back in 2 years when you come back and try it again. But and this is one thing because people ask me like, well, what kind of plan B should I have going to a selection course like that? And I think back to myself, and I don't know where I land actually as to whether or not my approach was reasonable because I didn't have a plan B, but I also didn't know very much about the program because in the early 90s, the internet wasn't really a thing. Yeah. And I think I had met in passing one person who was a SEAL before actually joining to go down that pipeline. I had no idea how many people get hurt. Like you'll be on the obstacle course and there's some like the spider wall, which is essentially vertical plywood with very thin 2x4s, but I guess they'd be like a 1x4, and people will fall off and you're going to bust ankles and knees and you'll get rolled. So you'll get time to rehab. So that would be your medical roll. And then maybe it's a lagging injury and so you're not passing your 4-mile time runs. Like you'll get rolled again. You'll get a performance roll. But motherfucker, your plate better be clean after that because that's it. So there's really only 3 ways.
So Ranger School, there's one, we tell you up front how many people don't make it through the course. So we
and then that's a known quantity now for buds too.
Okay.
I mean, the internet is a thing in 2022.
So I think the commander does it rightfully so, saying if you don't quit, you have a much higher chance of making it through this.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean you have to make it. For us, it's actually abnormal to go straight through. It's only about 38% of people that start Ranger School actually go through every phase.
You mean sequentially without a break?
Correct.
Yep.
And about 60% of people that show up actually graduate eventually.
Yeah.
So just don't ever quit.
Yeah.
So you can fail and meet a requirement, right? That
Yep.
RAP week, that's what. So you were close with RASP. It's Ranger Assessment Program.
Yep.
And that's
actually you already. There's another way. Yeah, you can fail the standards. That's
right.
Another way to get shit canned from buds. Yep.
So I think almost you can quit, of course. The one that I think I didn't hear in buds is that peers.
So and that's interesting that you bring that up because peer evaluations are some of the most essential things, especially from an instructor perspective, because there's the face that people put on in front of those that they think are evaluating them, and then there's the face that they put on when they're just around their peers. So the top 5, bottom 5, the anonymous top 5, bottom 5, or Glover talked about it a different way in the ODA pipeline. It was like 5 guys you want to go to war with and 5 guys you would want to leave home. It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
And of course, people hearing this are like, oh, what happens if somebody has their mortal enemy and they put that name down? I'm like, yeah, if it shows up one time on one piece of paper, not concerning. Why is this guy's name on a class of 40 showing up 34 times?
Yep.
And as the instructor, it gives you that really valuable insight. So peer evals are a part of BUD/S training, but it's not one where it's going to eject you from the program.
Yeah, ours is straight numerical, like you got peered. And like you said, it's a system of 1 to 13 or whatever. And sometimes, which is interesting as an instructor, to see entire squads or elements go wrong and try to rig it. Like, we love each other. Like, you have to peer somebody.
Yeah.
And if you just put the truth in, it comes out. And actually, it takes 2 peers to be kicked out. So you have to be peered. If you get peered the first time, maybe you just got a bad lot, right?
Yeah.
First time it's you, and the second, no, it's you.
Well, that's the thing. Like, a name shows up. Again, we're talking about the melting pot of the military again. I serve with my best friends and worst enemies.
That's right.
Trust me. I would put down my worst enemy's name, like, oh, number 1, this motherfucker right here. And he's probably doing, oh, Andy, fuck you. And it's like, but our names, hopefully don't show up a bunch. It's like, that shit's in the wash.
It's really crazy how you can tell when an element is trying to cheat the peer system.
Yeah.
Where they get it, they have a conversation like, okay, you put me 1, he puts me this 1.
Yeah, mathematically, you're like, wow, this is totally flatline.
That's
whereas
right.
everybody else's is a heartbeat.
And I've seen entire elements recycled because of it.
Checkmate.
That's right. And they'll tell you, like, don't try it.
Yeah.
Like, because like, we've seen it all.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you think.
Yeah, the math doesn't lie.
Even with the math, with the food, with the you name it, we've seen it all.
Yeah.
So you can fail patrols too. It's just the straight grade, which is a very.
I'd put that under the failing a
standards.
performance metric. Yeah.
So it gets back to, like, it's not about physical. Like, even range squad is almost 0 to do with physical, other than being able to put something on your back and carry it around for a long time. That's the only physical part after the first week. Unlike BUD/S, I know that you have lots of physical evolutions, right?
I mean, and people can go online and
The
read.
pool and shit.
Yeah, but you can go online and read what they are.
The bobbing thing, though.
The bobbing thing is super relaxing.
Oh, yeah.
I say that I grew up in a beach town and spent a lot of time in the water. But when the instructors are yelling at you, you only hear it when your head's above the water. So it's like, and back down. It's like, the bobbing, so it's called drown proofing, or it was when I went through. I'm sure they have a more passive way to say it now. But you build your way up to it, because the eventual test is you have feet bound and hands bound behind your back.
Yeah.
And you bob up and down for, I think it's an hour. And then you have to travel the length of the pool back and forth, and you're doing essentially a butterfly kick. They throw a mask into the water. You got to go down and get the mask, grab it with your teeth. I don't remember how long you bobbed for, but that's the test.
Yeah.
The first time, though, they have you get in the water. Your feet are not bound. Your hands aren't bound. And, like, this normal training pop line that event, and then you practice that, and then, like, okay, we're going to bind your feet. And they practice that. It's not like you just throw people into that evolution. Even one of the one that actually trips a lot of people out, the 50-meter underwater swim, where you jump into the pool.
Yep.
Can't push off the side. You got to do, I believe it's a front flip. I guess you could do a back flip if you wanted to be sassy. Swim to the other side, touch it, another flip, and then come back. Students go out. I mean, people come, like, breaching out of the water, but we start with, like, a 10-meter underwater swim, then 50, and then it's most of the evolutions in BUD/S are graduated, meaning it's titrated up towards that. Even the 4-mile time runs, I forget the time in first phase, it's a slightly faster requirement in second and a slightly faster in third. So, we don't even hit them with the third phase time until they're there. And the same thing with the swim and the obstacle course. So some of the stuff that people see, they're like, oh my God, that's crazy. I'm like, yeah, but, watching somebody in the Stanley Cup finals is also crazy, because what you're not seeing is the history and the practice and the career that they had leading up to it. So don't take the snapshot or pay attention to the snapshot, because it is interesting, but just realize, like, it's not psychotic. We actually teach them any requirement that they have in training. Actually, even in my entire career, any performance metric that was a go or no go, was the skills needed to achieve that were taught to me. They didn't just be like, oh, hey, by the way, so you're in sniper school and today's test is going to be a driving test. Like, none of that shit happens. It's all stuff that they brief, train to. Here's the standard. You're going to probably do practice tests before, and then you're going to have your go, no go day.
So I think for Ranger School, the only difference is after the first weeks, all the requirements are known. Like, the standards are known. Like, literally, like, run 5 miles, 40 minutes. Like, there's no question. If you can't do that on your worst day, don't show up to Ranger School.
Yeah, don't even waste your time.
I think the one element that is the unknown is the carrying the load on your back, because after the first week, you never do PT again. It's just field problems. Just there's no more physical requirements other than being able to ruck with your back.
Yeah.
Which, if you can't, then that gets to peers, and Your load has to be cross-loaded. The craziest thing I saw as an instructor, which I had no clue of, I got to travel with a class through all the phases, right? Because it's in 3 different phases. And they assign an officer, again, to be an LNO, like that voice between the class and the ranger instructors. Get to mountain phase, and I see all these guys with their head down and this giant lump in their back of their neck. It's called rubbernecking. So if you take an adult male who hasn't had the right stimulus of carrying that ruck on his back, and then you put him in the mountains of Dahlonega, Georgia, and have him climbing up like this, somebody who's very weak, that's a response of the body.
Like a postural response?
It locks their head down, and then this giant mass forms on the back of their neck.
So they're not trying to do it. Their body is forcing them into that
because
posture.
They hadn't prepared for that rigor, the physical way. I had never seen it in my life. It was scary. It was like somebody.
Yeah, it sounds like some Elephant Man shit.
Yeah, and they would keep patrolling if they wanted. Like, 'cause that's not.
Yeah, you're not there to save their life. They have to make the choice on their own.
So I saw dudes who couldn't raise their neck, but yes, Sergeant. Yes, sir.
I mean, I can respect that.
Yeah, I respect it.
I mean, it's up to you. How far do you want to go? Do you want to be in a wheelchair when you're 40, or do you want to, make your way through this and then let's rehab a little bit?
Yeah, but the ruck. So back to the phase line.
Mm-hmm.
OCS right after 9/11. It had nothing to do with 9/11. I was already in the pipeline. OCS, then to infantry officer, but I had already been an infantry soldier for, I don't know, 8-9 years at that point. And then I get assigned to a mechanized unit in Germany, and this is where I don't pull an Andy Stump, but I tell people in the Army there are other options and you make your career. So I started making calls, and I got a hold of the guy who takes care of assignments, because I didn't want to go to a mechanized unit. I'd been airborne all my life. Yeah. And I said, look, I have jump master, ranger, all this stuff. I got an open-ended assignment to Europe. Would you mind assigning me to Italy? And he's like, dude, I'm your assignment officer. You have an assignment to a heavy mechanized brigade in Germany, but I'll switch you.
Yeah. So, which actually kind of makes sense, because it's more of a square circle, or a square peg in a square hole.
There's lots of things in the Army that don't make sense.
Well, that's just the military in general.
Yeah.
How was the difference, though, when you switched from being enlisted in the Army to being an officer? How'd your life change there, quality of life-wise? Or was it largely the same experience throughout?
I mean, quality of life, you're making more money, but, as an O3E, the responsibility. So people often ask me, like, why did you switch? Why did you go from a Sergeant First Class or E7 to, I at that point, I basically thought it was capped at that point. Once you get to that level, now you're in an advisor position, and I wanted to be in the actual operating position. Yeah. So right after IOBC, I got that assignment, and because I had zero training needed, like all my people I went to school with out of IBC were reporting to Ranger School or some other school. I went straight to Italy.
Yeah, you showed up good to go.
Good to go. Straight to Italy, and they were already loading out for Iraq.
So this was probably late 2002 you showed up there?
Yeah, I was like late December of 2002.
Yeah, okay. Where'd you guys stage for the initial invasion?
Italy.
Well, that's bullshit.
Isn't it?
Stuck in the fucking desert in RR Saudi Arabia.
Nope. So what happened is actually Turkey helped a lot.
We stopped in Turkey on the way. Which is where my, what's that one where they jab you in the arm like 7 times with the little needle? The smallpox.
Smallpox, yep.
That's where, because I got that as we were leaving, because my wife at the time was pregnant. They gave me that as we were getting on the buses to start our journey over. Felt fine the first day. Holy shit. I started feeling like I was going to die when we landed in Turkey. And of course, I was like the brand new guy, so I'm like laying on the C5. Like, they're like, hey, watch the gear. I'm like, trust me, I'll watch the gear. Just dying, sitting there. Oh, wow. And then it get even like, I'm talking like lymph nodes that felt like the size of golf balls. I was down hard for like 3-4 days.
Dang. So I get to Italy. This is early 2003. The invasion is going to happen. Mm-hmm. But Turkey doesn't allow the 4th Infantry Division to go through Turkey. Like, they said yes, and then they said no.
Oh, I remember them changing their mind on that, actually.
So now the 4th Infantry Division has to turn their boats around and go around all the way to Kuwait. So what happens, they insert the 173rd Airborne Brigade airdrop. So we go from loading our stuff out for whenever to getting on 15 C-17 planes to be dropped into northern Iraq. And this is what's in the book, which is The Root of Awakening to Combat Jumps. of the weight that an infantry unit is going to have to carry by themselves for at least the first 3 days.
Yeah.
I'd never had that heavy of a weight on my body, and I'd at that point been airborne for like 10 years. But every person to the soldier, 100 plus.
That's a lot, especially if you're not used to jumping with that weight.
Yeah.
Even waddling to get up to the door or the ramp, depending on how you guys went out, that's gnarly.
And I actually put a photo up. There's this famous photo of us the day after where this guy's kneeling and he has this giant rucksack on his back. It's just full of stuff, and everybody. He's an ammo bearer, right? So he has like extra ammo bag.
Basically, has a pallet of ammo in his backpack.
That's right. And everybody's like, why? Nobody jumps in with that amount. Like, people are really ignorant to what the weight of ammo and water is.
Yeah, I mean,
and they think that everybody's an infantryman. Well, you got a M240 machine gun guy over there. You got a mortarman. Everybody's carrying a mortar rounds.
Yeah.
You got a javelin gunner. A Stinger's being jumping it. Like, people don't understand what you have to jump in.
Well, especially if you're planning on being there on your lonesome for 3 days and you don't know when your next resupply is. So where'd you guys jump into?
Bashur.
Was it an airfield or just desert?
So this is the vet thing. The special forces were on the ground in an airfield in northern Iraq, secured it for us.
Yeah.
Linked up with the Peshmerga. It was a secure airfield.
Why didn't you guys just land?
You couldn't let. So I got that question a lot too. It's a good question. Yeah. You can drop.
Jumping is dangerous shit. That's why I ask.
Yeah, 1,000 people can be dropped in a minute.
That's like really dangerous.
You know how long it would take to air land a C-17 one at a time onto that size of that airfield?
I mean, I'm going to guess more than a minute.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah. I mean, I get it, but there's also an increased risk to personnel and equipment spitting them outside of the aircraft.
And we dropped equipment too.
Yeah.
We dropped vehicles, heavy dropped.
How high did you guys go out?
So I remember you asking this question, and you
no, the fucking combat waivers are real, man, and that shit's insane.
So I was practicing at 1,000 in Panama, but we dropped it from 800 in Echelon, right? So it is real what you were talking about. Yeah. I forget who you were talking to about. You can pull your reserve as you want.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna, but because all 15 C-17s are coming in, they're staggered.
I'm sorry. You all got out at the same time in the staggered formation of the C-17s? Holy shit.
Yeah, and it was pitch black. Have you ever seen a 80-second mass drop?
Probably on video.
Yeah, they don't do it often.
Yeah.
It's usually for like some anniversary, but it is a feat of science and
just a sky full of canopies.
Sky full of canopy in a matter of minutes. So it's more than 60 seconds, but it's
not much more.
It's not much more. So that's the thing. Like, why didn't you just it's a secure airfield? Why didn't you just land?
I wasn't saying it like that. I'm just
not you, but other people. Because the combat,
fuck other people.
Combat. So like the 82nd, everybody who wasn't on that jump, it's a combat start. It means a lot to.
Yeah.
And there's only been like 29 in the Army's history. It means a lot, and it meant a lot to us.
Yeah.
But it didn't mean that in our minds.
I'm not knocking that at all.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking like, hey.
No, I know.
Is there anywhere you could put this thing down? Because that's way less dangerous than jumping out of this thing.
So I write in the book I've done a lot of physical stuff in my life. I later become an athlete. I think I'm in shape.
A late bloomer, if you will.
Late, absolutely. But maybe even better because I don't have all that wear and tear.
Maybe. That's one way to look at it.
Yeah. So I even did the Best Ranger competition.
Okay. Which I've definitely heard of that.
I did that while I was a Ranger instructor in 2007. Interestingly, the guy who won that year is later my boss and now is my best friend. CAG guy, PhD. Just on a different level. That was hard. Nothing in my life has ever been like being dropped into northern Iraq into a mud field. So it was rice fields. It was
with like water, like mud.
Yes, mud.
Did anybody drown?
No. So I don't. So they said it was rice fields, but it wasn't like Vietnam rice paddies. But it was, mid calf.
I mean, all you need to do is get hit by somebody else's rucksack as it's coming in, face down in the mud, and you're cooked.
So I talk about in the book. I've never done something so physical as try to move through that mud with that weight.
Oh yeah.
Every time I took a step,
just quicksand.
The earth would grab my foot and not let go.
Do you know the move in that situation?
No.
Leave all your shit and borrow somebody else's.
No.
Like I don't know what happened to my stuff. I need to borrow yours.
I mean, I've never felt help. There's only been a few times I've ever felt helpless in my life. So walking's one thing, but I would fall down with that ruck on my back into the mud.
Oh man!
And to get up was every bit of my, and this is why, if anybody ever wants to know, like, why you're preparing, like, that was why. That night was why. Had somebody been shooting at us, it would have gone a lot worse.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Had you jumped into an enemy-controlled terrain and then you're inside a complex ambush with all that shit going on?
Yeah. Then I throw down a ruck and let's fight.
Yeah.
So
no, I just mean in addition to the
yeah.
physically arduous conditions, holy cow.
So I actually was angry too that night because there was people who didn't make it, who decided it was okay to just lay there.
Really?
Yeah, to include leadership.
That would actually be the place that I would start if you had had me guess the cohorts of people that did or did not make it.
Yeah. Yeah. Literally, so, it's that's the worst thing in my life. And the next morning, because we sit there and you're supposed to go, if you do an airborne jump, you all go to different locations that only you know where they are. And that's why you have like little ants. Everybody's going everywhere. Don't get on the air, on the tarmac. And
yeah.
I get to where we're going and we have minimum forces that we're supposed to gather together and then move out. So I have enough of my platoon to move out to my blocking position. And they say no. So now I'm just a ball full of hate. One, I had to get there with all my stuff, and now they're telling me I can't move out because other people are so not able to get to where they're going.
Oh, man.
So the command's just dealing with this chaos of the mud, the chaos of the mud. Finally, day breaks. You can see now you can hit the dry mud to move around. One of my soldiers, so there were people. So this is the bell curve, right? So there were people that was their sixth jump out of airborne school.
Get some.
Yeah, a month, if not whatever, from airborne school, arrived to Italy, jump into combat, and you get this bell curve of physical capabilities, and this guy could not get up, could not move his ruck. He said, "Leave me here." So
I mean, that's not necessarily how that works, but
right. So my NCOs go back and they're trying to help motivate him. Like, look, dude, that's not an option.
Yeah.
Where nobody's carrying your shit. So he tries to take his weapon and he puts it in his mouth and try to pull the trigger.
Okay, that's an extreme choice.
Yeah. And this is my opening moments of being a platoon leader in combat.
Wow. What did you end up doing with that guy?
So luckily, not luckily, the NCOs were there. They just tackled him. Questionable on whether his rifle would have worked. It looked like he had basically used it as his cane to get through the mud.
I mean more, what do you do with somebody who is exhibiting that type of decision making?
Suicide ideation.
Yeah.
Well, not even ideation.
That's an attempt.
Attempt.
That's rough because you have a job to do, but you also have this person who's there with you. Yeah, I don't know if I'd be giving them their gun back.
We didn't.
Yeah.
So he was, and this is the beauty of the system. And I talk about in my later 2008, which is a different army with a whole new kind of challenges. In this moment, as in, an infantry unit dropped, it was about 1,000 people dropped into northern Iraq. That happened. I made the call to hire what had happened. They sent a vehicle over. They picked him up. I never saw him again.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there when I got back a year later.
That's the only move. Yeah, you gotta remove him from that situation.
Yeah. But that's because you can't. If you fast forward to 2008, that would have been handled a lot differently.
Or go back in time to, World War I.
Yeah.
And you're jumping in like, sorry, there's no vehicle available.
Yeah. But by 2008, you could do a line of coke right here in front of me, and I'd be like, cool, man, I hope you get on the truck.
Slightly extreme headspace as well, but yeah.
And by 2008, and this is in the book as well, when I'm a company commander now, and the Army was different. I've never heard anybody on your show talk about stop loss.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever come up.
Yeah, so I did.
We'll get there. We'll get to 2008.
Okay.
Yeah.
2003, an amazing year, actually. Well, one, there was a 2-star general who stood on our plane. And I know you have experience with this too, of being in Iraq. A 2-star general stood on our plane and said this will be no longer a 90-day deployment to the entire brigade, because he thought that. Yeah. But why would you tell somebody that?
Yeah, it's a weird bookend to put in people's heads.
Yeah.
Better off just saying, hey guys, we actually don't know.
Yeah. I'm
always a fan of just defaulting to the truth, even if the truth is we don't really know, but we will update you as information comes into us.
As going back, as knowing who that person, his history, the history of the Army up to that point, short tours were the thing.
Yeah.
We weren't doing large scale invasions and then staying at that time.
So how long was your 90-day deployment?
12 months. So it was, but it was the psychological, like you said, it'd be better. It's like we don't, men, we don't know, but to go through that psychological up and down, months later, starting to talk to the wives, and the wife's like, there's all these rumors. Rumors are like disease and
it's cancer.
CNN broke to our families that we'd be there 12 months before we knew.
That's terrible.
Yeah, that's the reality of that first deployment.
Yeah,
that invasion.
Yeah, it was pretty wild. We were evolving at the speed of war.
Yeah, and I would never take any of it back. I mean, I'll never get the chance again to be an invading army into a places Americans have been, where the mission is very fluid. We were engaged in uniform Iraqi division within a week of our drop, and then the mission's evolving so fastly of what we were doing, what we were asked to be doing, and the autonomy. There were no fobs, no cops.
Yeah. Where'd you guys end up during that year time period? What'd you end up putting down your longest set of routes?
So my battalion, my company was a lot different. So the brigade moved to Kirkuk.
Okay.
And that was their base. But for some reason, just by roll of the dice, my unit and my company was everywhere. We did some time in Hawija, which
so super mobile then.
Yeah, because I actually had vehicles, Humvees, wood slats.
Yeah. Well, back in that day, the IED threat was low, so fuck it, roll around in Humvees. I don't know if I'd do that again in 2005, 2006.
I mean, they were coming. People think they came like 2000. No, they were in 2003. They were starting to be. They were a lot less. They were one. So we did a lot of battlefield collection, which is we're just driving around. One autonomy of one officer, 40 people. We'll see you in a couple days, but we would roll up to a SAM missile in a farm field. Like, damn, what do we do with this? We were doing battlefield collection for like months.
Yeah.
Just find entire fields of artillery guns and the 155 rounds, which would later be used as IEDs. Yeah. We spent, and then we ended up, the EOD, which my wife is active duty EOD, she hates these stories, would stop coming out with us because you had to have, back then you had to have EOD as Air Force EOD to come out and blow things you would find.
Yeah.
And they were like, fuck that, I mean, coming out every day. So they just gave us the C4. So then we're doing these C4 ladders, which the guys love, right? That variety of just blowing stuff up. Just massive fields. So we'd actually hire and bring Iraqis with us to collect things up into giant piles, and then we'd blow it. My wife hates these stories. It's like, but we were just finding stuff. But I was also there for the day they deactivated the army, the Iraqi army, and then having hundreds and hundreds of people come up to you the next day surrounding you going, what do I do now? Just because you just cut off tens and tens of thousands of people from any pay, any profession.
Yeah, there's a lot to, looking in the rearview mirror, whether or not that was a good call or a bad.
Oh, no, it was terrible.
Yeah. What did you guys do with the SAMs?
Called in.
We had
to take pictures of it.
Did you ever spray paint a dick on the side of one?
No, but we did have
opportunity missed.
I have pictures of like riding it, like.
Not as good.
Not as good.
Not as good. Although I do appreciate that.
We found
you have to leave your mark as you travel through.
So many things, and sometimes we would just drop a incendiary grenade into something.
Yeah.
The control panel, something like that, just to. But it was an amazing year. It really was of opportunity, experiences. Crazy stuff that you just don't think you'd ever do in war. Even so we were ambushed one night on both sides, which is just chaos, of a longer convoy at that point. First ambush ever, but complex both sides with RPGs and machine gun. And I'm in the front vehicle like a dumbass where I'm not supposed to be. I'm in the front vehicle of an 8-vehicle convoy. Like, what am I going to do up there? But at this time, which I know is different for some people, but like go out and drive around is the mission.
Yeah. I mean, that was the mission sometimes, depending on what battle space you were in.
Yeah. Which, as an infantry guy, I go out and drive around every day. In 2008, that gets really crappy because go out and drive around until you get blown up.
Until you get vaporized.
Yeah. But so we get this ambush. Nobody gets really hurt. It's an interesting story. Return fire. The command says, well, you got ambushed there, so I want you to stop and live there. So we actually set up in a water treatment plant, just on our vehicles. This is where we were living at the time. And then they said, okay, we want you to set an ambush where you were ambushed every night.
I don't think these people telling you to do that know their job very well.
Okay, right. So I'm really pissed as an infantry platoon leader to go out, and we're taking turns with the other 3 infantry platoon leaders to set up a literal Ranger School platoon ambush along the side of a road, waiting for something to come.
Yeah.
I mean, I was, you don't let your men show this, but I was so furious. Like, this is
Yeah, that's really frustrating.
thing.
And you know they were thinking it as well.
Yeah.
So that's that tenuous balance. If you don't want to talk shit down the ladder.
Yes.
That's a tough one. I
Yes.
mean, they're not stupid either.
They're not stupid. Until 3 people come walking down that road with RPGs up and down their back like they're in Ranger School.
And then everybody wishes they were there.
Yep. It wasn't my platoon. It wasn't my platoon. So we're literally, a kilometer away. We just hear the entire, world open up.
Yeah.
Where this infantry platoon it's just demolishing these 3 guys who just the worst luck of their life.
For sure.
So I'll never talk crap against some of the things that we do in the tactics because you never know. And I end up in a similar situation months from then. What was also interesting, and you'll appreciate this, in the conventional guys. I mean, that was an awesome operation. So the brigade commander wants to come out and see the site. Platoon leader all happy about it, thinks it's going to be a great talk, and the brigade commander goes, "Show me where you're positioned," and he starts just going through like, well, "What were your night control measures?"
Like, sir, we don't ask these type of questions.
And he just starts ripping this guy in the inadequacies of his platoon ambush.
Yeah. Well, I bet you that guy didn't make those mistakes again.
Yeah, because one of the guys actually crawled away. We didn't get him.
What?
Yeah.
How many American forces were shooting at him?
40.
That's Bush.
Yeah.
That's Bush.
That dude has a story. They found him later in a hospital dying, but he had a story.
Yeah. He should not have been able to crawl
But this
away.
gets to, these are the tactics, right? You have every soldier has a left and right limit.
Yeah, for sure.
So something was off.
Indeed. So where'd you go after 2004? Probably coming back stateside or back to Italy?
Back to Italy, went back to school like Jocko. So the program at that time was do your platoon leader time, then go back to school and finish your bachelor's degree.
Huh.
So I was a young. So what wife am I on at this point? I'm a wife. I only have one. I'm divorced once at this point, so I'm single.
Okay.
Living in Italy, going to school and finishing my bachelor's degree in Italy. On post, there's bases.
Okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, there's college. So I did that. Went back to the career course at Fort Benning, Georgia for the captains. Volunteered to be a ranger instructor. Then I'm ranger instructor for 2 years. Did the best ranger competition. Amazing opportunity.
So you're 03 at this point?
Yep, 03.
Yep.
Get the call. So this is now late 2007. Get the call from assignment officers. Do you want to accompany command in combat right now?
Yes.
Yeah, the only answer is yes. Yes, of course. I'm like, okay, pack your stuff up, drive to Colorado, and then we'll fly you to Iraq. It was a mechanized unit, mechanized infantry, Bradley's tanks. Like, so do I need to go to school for that first? Because I had been an infantry airborne ranger up until this point.
I'm sure you'd seen them before. That doesn't necessarily mean you know how to operate those things.
I had never even been around one.
Really?
Yeah.
Even I had been around those things.
Not in 2003. No. Oh, no, we saw some. Yeah, I saw some.
Bradleys and tanks are awesome.
Yeah.
We would work with conventional sometimes, and they would just bust up on all 4 corners.
Yeah.
And I was just like, hey, man, I'm going in this courtyard. Please don't fuck me up because that's a really big gun.
Yeah, I learned to love them later, but I was going to go command a combined arms team. So back then you would take a tank platoon into a mechanized company and give away one of your mechanized. So you have tanks and Bradleys with you and infantry.
Yeah.
So this is 2008 though. The Army is, why are you calling me at Ranger School and saying I need you to fly into combat and take a company? But that's how stressed the Army was at this point.
Yeah. Op-tempo was grinding people to dust.
So this, I write this in the book. Stop loss had already been put in effect where it doesn't matter how long you had served, you could no longer get out of the Army because you would go on.
That's a fun fine print one.
Yes. They called the Backdoor Draft. I really hate it because of the experience of taking a company where about 40% of the soldiers were stop losses. Guys who had done a tour, served their 4 or 6 years, had a date in their mind. That's the only thing they're looking for. And then months before, the Army puts a policy in and says nobody's allowed out.
That's why you're saying by an 08, the guy could be snorting a line of coke, and you're like, okay,
Yes.
muster's at 07.
Absolutely. There was
Wow.
nothing. So we also.
Can you imagine the headspace of those soldiers who want nothing more than to be out?
So this is what I took. Like, what are you gonna do to me? Send me to Iraq?
It's funny that you should ask. Yes.
Yeah. So I wasn't there for their deployment of this unit, but that's what was happening. You could do, and the Army also dropped every enlistment requirement that we've ever had in place.
Yeah, the felon waivers, all
Felon
sorts
waiver,
of stuff.
drug waiver, mental health waiver, physical waiver. It was insane.
It got wild. I think all the branches of the military did that, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So I take this company.
How many people in a company?
140.
Okay. We don't use terms like that. SEAL community.
Oh, really? Companies? You don't have?
I guess it would be a team. SEAL Team 3 would have about 140 people. Yeah, very different vernacular when it comes to the leadership positions.
Nice. I think I should have picked up on that. I fly in a country, and of course the way the Army works, like, what do you mean take a company, right? There's no company here for you to take. So I get assigned to this battalion, TOC, in downtown Baghdad, near Sadr City. Is where we're at. It's actually it was a building. It wasn't a fob. They called it a cop, but it was literally one building that was 3 or 4 stories high, and the entire building was full.
Interesting.
So I'm on my second wife at this point. Oh yeah, no, I was married during the first tour, and she found an Italian guy. So I'm single now, and I met my wife in that building that I was assigned. She was an EUD.
How many times have you been married?
3.
Okay.
Sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah.
Just never had anybody ask themselves the question, what wife was I on at that time?
I'm hoping my wife doesn't watch this.
Oh, you're proper.
She doesn't. She has her career, and she stays in that lane. So
that's fine. Because you know what's going to happen. Somebody's going to forward it to her.
No.
It's totally fine.
So interesting story. Tucker Carlson roasted me a couple months ago. Took a clip of me on TV, roasted me on his show.
Did he know you at all?
No.
Okay.
Cocksucker. Didn't know me at all because that's something I said talking to another, like on MSNBC. So I said something that he didn't like. So he rips me. I actually mentioned my wife. I said, my wife still serves. I have skin, I know what I'm saying. So then he just goes off like, look at this guy willing to have his wife go off and die for him in Ukraine or whatever. So I was really scared of my wife seeing that. Like I was honestly scared because it was bad.
Yeah.
So I told her up front, like, this is what happened. Here's the clip. And she just starts dying laughing. It's like, that's the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life.
Sounds like you picked a good one.
Yeah. So get to this building. I meet her there. Of course, there's nothing. We just meet there. I end up getting assigned a company because they were going to fire the guy. And I knew they were going to fire the guy because the guy was just terrible. In a place called JSS right outside of Sadr City. I don't know if you ever traveled there. So I go there. I started doing inventories, which is what you do. You have to.
You get assigned for everything.
Yeah, but you have to go through every soldier's pencils. It's ridiculous. As soon as I get there and do those inventories, I'm like, there's something wrong here. The way that people are talking to each other. There's people that can't go outside the wire because they have profiles. I can't wear a helmet. I can't wear body armor. It was. I thought it was like Lord of the Flies, and I'd come from semi-disciplined units, high-level paratroopers who consider ourselves a higher level. Like my eyes were wide open. I was just making this list. The company commander wasn't even there. He would only work at night. So this guy who I was going to take over from, I never met. So I started inventorying. I go off to inventory another element, and while I'm gone, you know what an IRAM is?
No.
So an improvised rocket-assisted munition.
It sounds awesome.
Yeah, it sounds really. They're impressive. So they're actually a Hezbollah weapon. So different actors in Iraq at this time providing different advice to people how to do things. They had these things in 2008 that were called Fob Destroyers. So it was a Hezbollah-designed weapon, usually on a dump truck. And they would rig the dump truck with rails, and then they would have canisters, like trash cans or propane bottles, full of like 100 to 200 pounds of C4.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So it would pull up next to a fob or a cop, pull up to it, stop, push a button, and it was called a lob weapon because these rockets, they're really makeshift rockets, would go up and then it would come down right on the other side of the wall.
So pretty short distance though.
Very short distance, like less than 100 meters.
Oh wow.
So the one had actually hit the base that we were in that when the 82nd was there, and you can imagine.
So they're projectiles with 1 to 200 pounds of C4?
Correct.
Damn.
Yeah. They're called Fob Destroyers.
Yeah, I can see why.
Legitimate threat in Iraq in 2008. Not talked about a lot, but you
Yeah.
can Google it. You can actually Google and see the one that hits my unit. Because Hezbollah, of course, they had their own TV news camera with them.
Yeah.
Videotaping it as they're attacking us, and then put to fancy music and everything. So 8 of these land inside the little base that I was getting ready to take over, and the holes were huge.
Yeah, craters. Probably.
You could stand in them at waist deep. 1,000-pound T-walls or Alaska bears just thrown on their side.
Wow.
It was insane. There's one guy so nobody died, which is crazy. So this is June 2008. One guy who ended up leaving later would lose all his teeth because he had, from the concussions, had fractures.
Killed all the roots, probably.
Had fractures all throughout. So next time I saw him, he had no teeth.
Interesting look.
So take this unit who is already full of stop losses, already low morale, black sheeps. The commander literally was asleep during this.
And they get that receiving end of that ambush.
Oh, wait a minute. Hold up. Sorry. I got to back it up to one more bit. 8 hours before those rockets landed, there were 2 soldiers in that place, my unit, sniffing canned air.
The whippets? Is that what they call that?
They call it huffing.
I don't know.
Canned air is the stuff you spray on your computer.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be controlled back then. Like you'd have to lock it up because
really
people would huff it.
Okay, I guess you learn something new every day.
So don't put things past conventional soldiers
or just human beings in general.
Yeah.
So
the report believes that they were huffing this air.
Okay.
And they were playing a game where you take a 9mm and depress the slide and pull it and it doesn't do anything.
With a loaded round there?
Yes.
I mean, that's a really smart game.
So it was
that's
working.
Super high level.
But he did it to his neck.
Are you fucking kidding me?
I'm not kidding.
I'm going to guess that it went off.
It went off.
Holy shit.
Quadriplegic immediately.
Yeah. He always like he survived.
Yeah. Interesting story on what the other guy tells himself now.
Oh, I'm sure there's some very interesting self-justification there.
And I had to do the actual, the court-martial. No, not the court-martial, but the UCMJ on that guy because I took over. So this happens. One soldier shoots the other soldier in the neck. It's a big event for all 140 of them. The first sergeant goes ape crap, assigns them all to wear 100% of their gear 100% of the time. So, of course, they're all inside their shoes when the bombs go off.
Which is a housing unit for people listening.
Yeah, it's literally a single wide trailer.
Yeah.
The guy who shot the guy thinks that because of his event, less people died because they weren't out of their shoes.
And they were wearing all their shit.
So that's what he tells himself. So the unit was already...
He's a real forward thinker, by the way.
Yeah.
Nostradamus, if you will, because he knew it was coming.
Yeah. So the unit was already jacked up from seeing this. And, of course, the chain of command is going crazy.
Yeah.
8 hours later, the enemy pulls this up beside the base and unleashes hell onto them. So I'm somewhere else. I get this call and told report back immediately from where I was. I report back, go to the battalion commander. He goes, this is what happened. The previous company commander has already been... So the brigade commander drove there to get in my car or get my truck and drove him away. I get taken to the battalion commander. He said, fix it. Fix what, sir? Fix it all. So I get assigned, and then I get taken to the base where there's no power because it took out the generators, it took everything. It just smells like burnt death to this place. And that's it. That's me taking company command in combat.
How long were you there for?
So they were on a 15-month tour.
That's a long stretch.
That's also where the Army had gone.
Yeah.
Right? So I was...
Were you hitting that like in the middle of that 15 months? Or?
I hit... So you remember I was in that building before that.
Yeah.
For about 3 months, actually.
Okay.
So I had another 8 months left as company command.
Damn. That's a long stretch.
So I write in the book about taking this team. Like, where do you start?
I mean, I think you'd have to start at the very, very bottom.
Yeah. What I did was pull them all in and said, look, nothing matters before this. This is day one for me.
That's what I'm saying. Like a reset. Start at the bottom.
I did reset.
And
But
also don't put your pistol to your friend's necks.
I actually was also told I can fire anybody in this company. Like they gave me that command. I thought that was amazing. You can fire anybody in this entire organization. Do away with entire platoons if you want, except the first sergeant.
Damn.
Yep. I've never been given that
I
before.
was going to say, that's a broad sword.
One problem was that one of the guys I needed to fire was the first sergeant, who then went on leave 3 days after that explosion. He said, hey, it's my time, I'm out. Because we had mid-tour. If you were gone for more than 12 months, you were allowed 2 weeks, go wherever you want.
Where did most people go during that 2-week time period?
It depends if you were single, married, and whatever. Some people went on vacation. Some people went on a life of debauchery.
Did they count the time it took you, like if you wanted to come back stateside against your 2 weeks? It was when you got there?
Yeah.
Okay. I was going to say, shit, that gets some travel delays. You're like, oh, I'm home for 4 days.
No, they're pretty good about it. They're pretty straightforward. Although that was after taking that command, so I was in theater for more than 12 months, so I got that leave.
Yeah.
That was the worst. It was great to be on leave, but the worst moment of my entire career was the day that I got back.
I was going to say that I think that would be a really, really hard transition to leave mid-environment like that, have a drastic, diametrically opposed environment that you're now living in, and knowing you have to go back to that. Did they ever have any issues with people just like, hey, missed my flight on the way back?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Doesn't surprise me.
AWOL, legit. Like, I'm out.
Yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't you think it? I mean, this is the state that we're in.
Yeah.
We couldn't make retention. You couldn't bring people in, so you had to keep them in.
Yeah.
I had legit psychopaths. We had a couple months later. So I ended up resetting, putting basic stuff back into place that wasn't there. Like you're going to start doing operations orders. You're going to plan. We were moved from that base, luckily, which really helped. But a couple months later, a private E3, like a 250-pound dude, is in a gym. So I had given one platoon away. I'm sorry. One of the platoons was just bad.
Yeah.
Like it's
not salvageable.
Not salvageable. Leadership was bad. And I had traveled around enough to know that there's this other unit that was in this base just pulling guard duty that was amazing. I mean, just like every non-commissioned officer was legit. They talked to each other like an army unit and everything. But this other one I had, where we were, had just gone too far off the reservation. It was literally like Apocalypse Now kind of stuff. It's like, sir, I need this platoon moved and switched out with this one. And the battalion supported. I didn't think they would, because the company that had gotten that platoon was like, no, absolutely not. And they actually backed me in every decision I asked for, even when I didn't think they would. So they switched that platoon out. While that Apocalypse Now platoon was over there, this very large E3 and this E6 comes to him in the gym and goes, go put your damn shoes on. The guy says, fuck off. And this 150-pound E6 says, what'd you say to me? The dude grabs him and beats him down with a 10-pound plate into his face until he's about dead.
Yeah.
And that dude had issues before he came in the military.
No, it doesn't surprise me.
I was responsible for that, which is another part of the story. It's my platoon, but it wasn't under me.
Yeah.
So I had to take that beast of a man and put like 2 people on him at all times until they flew him back. And then they tried him and found nothing. They said,
really?
PTSD related, or PTS related.
I mean, that could be the case for sure. I don't know if that should be a free pass.
Right, no. And I actually, for the guy who shot the other guy in the neck, I recommended max punishment, and he didn't get it either. I think he got like 2 years hard labor, but.
Yeah. Yeah, the military justice system doesn't always play itself out in the way I would have liked to have seen it.
It's tough. I had the same thing in OF1. I had a soldier just take a knee and shoot a guy in the back who was just running away. Like a looter.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant another American soldier.
No.
Not
like
that either. I'm
civilian.
not putting a judgment value on that. I'm just like, God damn it.
I write that in the book because I think it's a good example of, I know you've had people that have been accused of doing bad things.
Yeah.
We have our own history, and there's been a lot of things going on in Ukraine, and I've been interviewed about, like, is that normal in war? But so in OF1, we had a guy take a knee and shoot a civilian in the back.
Yeah.
And the entire squad stops like, what the fuck are you doing? And his weapon's taken, and he's investigated. He, of course, says that thought he saw a weapon. But it's when if the ethical, moral framework is there, like it isn't the rules, it's the group that puts some of that stuff in place.
So where'd you go after 2008? Well, actually probably 2009 at this point.
So this is where the career really goes off. Goes in a different direction. I come back because I had been. So most of those company commanders, my peers, which some of them were amazing and helped me out a lot, had been in command for like 3 years, which isn't normal for a commissional guy. You do max 2 years. But because of the tour, they were
24 months and gone.
Yeah, they were leaving people in for 3+ years. I was the only one who came in, after all of this. So I'm the only one who stayed. Because usually when you come back from combat, the unit will disperse.
Yeah.
Right. They'll just move everybody everywhere. So I stayed there another year, which is great. Actually, having a year of command and combat, and then to train another unit up for a year and go to that big training center, National Training Center. But then I applied to be in the. It's called the Joint Chief of Staff Internship. So it's a program for O3s in the Army. I don't know if the Navy. Yeah, you guys probably have similar things.
I have never heard of it, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, there are these things they call broadening assignments. So I applied to this thing, and my chain of command actually wouldn't let me apply. I had to use the open door policy and go like 3 levels up and say, I want to apply for this. The brigade commander said, go ahead. If you don't make it, then I'm taking. They were leaving, go right back to Iraq, right? Because you had 12 months on, 12 to 15 on, 12 months off, then 12 to 15 back in. I got accepted, and the program was 1 year at Georgetown University getting a master's, 1 year on the Joint Staff in one of the Joint Staff offices in the Pentagon, and then 1 year either with the Secretary of Defense office or Army staff. So for 3 years, I was basically out of the pipeline. But
seems like you're probably inside some interesting rooms, though.
So this is the thing.
Sounds wild.
It was insane. So the Georgetown was interesting, right?
Yeah. What'd you get your master's in?
It's in this program. You all the cohort of 20 of you, I think 20, have to do the same program. It's policy management.
Okay.
So it's a program that Georgetown designed for the military. It's only 1 year, so that's money.
Yeah, that's cool.
With no GRE, literally the Army competes it within themselves. Georgetown trusts the Army, and they go straight into schooling. So 1 year of school, get a master's, go into the Pentagon. But the program then, it's not like this anymore. You're a cohort of 20, and you might have a person in the J7, the J3 for operations, all these amazing places. But you also, at that moment, we traveled to every combatant command in the U.S. military.
Damn.
Yeah, so SOCOM, PACOM, CENTCOM.
All of them, yeah.
And then we'd go to anything around them as well. So for that year, and it was actually, my wife and my son had just been born. I was gone every month for weeks at a time, traveling around the world and sitting down with combatant commanders and them telling our group how they see the world and their challenges in their AOR. But basically, I went from the tactical level to
high strategic,
like universe level conversations with people and traveling, everywhere. It's just amazing. But also, I think some people get frustrated in the military or even coming out of the military without understanding how it all works. Like who made that decision? How was that decision made? How does it work?
Yeah.
Well, I went to this program was just, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you behind the curtain, give you all access. You're going to travel around and try to get as much understanding as possible. So that was that first year. The second year, I get assigned to my Army staff year, which I was frustrated with, which was the G1, which is personnel. Mm-hmm. But it's actually the MNRA, the Assistant Secretary of the Army's office as well. And then I get assigned to a group that thinks for the G1 called the Strategic Initiatives Group. So I'm a major at this point, 04. And they have a problem with suicides in the Army. They still do, but I learned
military wide.
Working in the Pentagon, I also learned that if Congress says you have a problem, it doesn't matter if you do. You do. So it doesn't matter if by percentage. I know you're a big fan of statistics.
Depends on which side of the stat you're on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's only 3. So I learned in college, which sometimes I listen to your episodes, and especially like with what's his name, the sheepdog guy.
Kennedy?
No.
Kennedy is sheep.
No.
I mean, you mean Mike Glover with?
No. Why can't I think of his name? The book.
Oh, are you talking about with
combat? On combat.
On killing?
On
and
killing.
On combat?
Which West Point is not a fan of, just so you know.
The fuck is his name?
David Grossman.
Yeah.
There's only 3. So we learned in Georgetown. There's only 3 types of lies: lies, damn lies, and statistics. It's actually an amazing book that I think you would love. Where
Yeah.
any statistic there's errors.
Dude, that
in
dude
it.
slid across the table. I mean, hand-drawn charts.
Yeah.
That I'm
At
like,
his house, right?
At his house.
Yeah.
At his table. And I'm sitting there thinking, like, I want to push back on this, but I'm not going to, out of respect for the fact you invited me into your home. But you can make
You pushed
this,
back a little.
I pushed back a little, but not as much as I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I also realized he wasn't interested in really taking any of the feedback on board. And that is what it is. He is who he is. I mean, like, go forward and do great things. But, I mean, I'm not a statistics guy or a math guy at all. But if you give me enough time, I can make a chart look like whatever the fuck I wanted to.
Yeah.
Mess with the scale. I'm just looking at this stuff. I thought he was going to be giving me, like, you know, not that it's the gold standard, but like FBI crime statistics. I'm like, sir, this is clearly in your handwriting.
But this book was a mind-blowing book too, though, to
Yeah.
really expose any statistics. And there's this thing called black figures, all this stuff. So I get assigned to the G1. They're having a problem, so I get assigned. So the Army, if it has a problem, it pulls two levers: leadership or training. So it doesn't matter if it's you have rapists in your formation. That's a leadership problem. People are suicidal. They need better training. So they have these two levers.
Sounds very binary.
Yeah, but it's a fact. And going up to that level,
Yeah.
at that level of a conversation, of course, engaged leadership solves a lot of problems. If they're not bringing you your problems, like Colin Powell said, then you're not leading.
Yeah.
Especially you at that lower level. But I got assigned to this group who was thinking about resiliency. And I know you guys have talked about this on the Space Lab, but the Army had its definition.
Yeah.
And of course, they look for solutions. The military wants solution. They went with this University of Pennsylvania solution for a training program for resiliency. And then they forced the entire Army to do it, like 2 weeks of training, online training, all this that would solve the problem.
Or not.
So I was involved in this, and it was really cool being like the grumpy infantry guy in this organization. And literally, people would stand up and go, "Why would somebody carry 60 pounds on their back? Like that's not right. That doesn't happen."
Like, no, it doesn't. It's 100.
No. So I got to learn a lot. I got to learn a lot about the machine of the Army too. Like, people don't understand the girth of the conventional forces, how big it is. It's 1 million men, like 500,000 in the active, 500 in National Guard and Reserve, 60,000-ish, depending on the year, 60,000 out. It's a machine.
Yeah.
So a lot of people have good ideals, and I learned and I had great ideas. And learn at that level, like, that's a great idea. Let's do it at scale. Let everybody in the Army pick where they want to go.
No.
Who's going to Fort Polk, Louisiana?
I was going to say Hawaii is going to be totally full.
So I did that. That was my third year. So this 3-year program. My wife's actually in command in D.C. area. Starting to have kids. Everything's starting to change. Dual military family. Biggest concern, biggest stressor is one, who's watching the baby when the baby gets sick. But the other one is how are we going to stay together as a career? And the Army tries real hard to keep people together. My wife had gotten selected to teach at West Point, to teach psychology at West Point. But there was a year gap. So I'd heard about this program from a friend when I was in command in the 04 school. The chief of staff of the Army, so the head general of the Army, had stood up a group called the Strategic Studies Group. So it's a group of 20 individuals. He actually got the idea from the Navy, unfortunately.
Just so you know, it's a good one.
Yeah. The CNO had a Strategic Studies Group, same name. We stole the name for like 20, 30 years. Closed it in 2016. Big mistake. But they actually would bring captains. So captains out of the Naval War College, put them in a group, had them think about concepts, and there's just some great concepts that come out of your guys' SSG. So the Army Chief of Staff, General Odinero, who'd been deployed for like 6+ years straight or something like that, knew he had problems, so he grabbed this guy to form this group, and it was a group of 20 individuals, usually of senior leaders, junior leaders, and civilians. But it had CAG in it, Special Forces, conventional like armor, brigade commanders, captains, which is really different. So I had heard about it. It had already gone 1 year. I applied to it, and I just as a whim, like, I need a year gap. And somehow, after like 4 interviews, it was really weird to be in the Army and do like a civilian interviewing process. Like, you work for the team, like, who are you as a person? I got accepted into this group, which was crazy. Wore a suit to work, nobody call each other by rank. I know that's normal for you guys, but
time and place. There's
Yeah,
actually
time.
a lot
That's
of
right,
it.
closed doors.
Yeah, closed doors, and
Yeah.
then everything that's public facing.
So this was like, hey, infantry guy now at this point, like 16 years, like you're going to come into this group of literally we had a brain, like a nuclear psychiatrist or nuclear physicist, a cognitive psychologist, a guy from CAG who are amazing, man. Just as dudes with PhDs, like, what am I doing in this group? Like, I went to Georgetown because it was easy. I got accepted in the group, and for a year, what it's designed to do is the chief of staff of the Army says, I want to meet with you regularly. I want you to tell me about things that I'm not tracking, like problems. So it's a research group. So the first 6 months was about learning how to do research.
Yeah.
But then for the next 6 months was to go out with his authority anywhere in the Army and research a problem. Really, and I was unwired, basically. I was unwired from the military system.
Well, they're going to be honest with you and not honest with him. So it's
Yeah.
probably a very good idea that he had a group of people like that.
But it was really, it was actually really combative. So
Really?
yeah, when you go visit a 3-star general, and one, they don't know what rank you are, and you're just a group, and what do you mean my boss stood up a group to think about problems? I was like, that's my job, is to bring them those problems, or to fix the Manning solution, whatever it is. It was really combative, actually, for a year.
Huh.
Because the Army is a bureaucracy, like it has a system.
Yeah.
How dare you stand up this group to give it authority over everybody?
Yeah, I could see that being antagonistic or perceived as antagonistic.
So interesting, as we did this 6 months, we were actually able to invite anybody, any luminary or anything like that in there. We were taught how to ask questions and all this stuff. And then we were told for 6 months, go research something and come back to me. And to have that access to sit down with the general and to be able to argue with him behind closed doors, it was just a mind-blowing experience. Over that year, though, we figured out as a group that urban areas, interestingly, mega cities, were a glaring blind spot for the U.S. Army.
We're talking like L.A., San Francisco size cities?
So mega cities means it's 10 million or more.
Okay.
So L.A. actually...
Both of those probably meet that.
Yeah. Technically, so L.A., yes, New York City and L.A. are the two only ones in the United States. L.A., which I do a lot of work in actually now, it is, but it's not, because density does really matter.
Yeah.
In
LA County was probably get you
Yes,
over the 10 million.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. New York City, legit.
Yeah.
Over 10 million. But there's lots of them around. There's over 30 plus of these cities. So everybody's research, and we broke up in these different groups, had to research, could we perform an operation in a megacity? So
Depend on the operation.
that's right. Some people would just say no. Like, no. It would eat a division for breakfast.
If there was a insurgent force there, for sure, that would be a meat grinder.
Which gets me to Ukraine, which I hope we get to talk to about.
Yeah, of course, because you recently visited there, right?
I did.
Yeah.
I did. So 2014 is when I'm doing this work.
Yep.
I'm actually, a lot of my friends who were in that group went back to the regular Army, which even that JCS program, I personally think, man, that'd be hard to be at that level and to understand how it works at that level and then go back down 10,000 levels down.
Yeah, you're just getting, at that point, force-fed direction.
Yeah. It was great. So, but I was rewired at that point. So I was able to wiggle my way into West Point. And so I moved with my wife to West Point. So now we're teaching at West Point. I'm teaching military tactics and strategy, which was another lifetime opportunity to learn about like all these theories and all these big names and like the things that people quote all the time, but kind of like the Bible, they don't read it, just use the quotes.
Yeah.
Teaching. Because I had been in that group, the SSG, at the time, the 3-star general that's in charge of West Point said, I don't think our military program is world class. So he assigned some people to look at it. Those people backbriefed him like, we can just keep doing the things we're doing and just do them a little harder and it'll be better. He was frustrated. Then I said, let me have a chance at this. I briefed the 3-star general about what I would change at West Point to make the West Point military program, because West Point's a college. It's crazy what the cadets go through in those 4 years. Just the fact that they survive it, but in its essence, it's a college. They can come out of there with whatever degree they want. It's actually very little military outside the lifestyle that's happening there.
Yeah.
Military is like tactics, in military theory and all this.
They do some stuff in the summers, right? Like the Naval Academy calls it their midshipman tour.
Yeah, they call it the cadet summer training.
Yeah. I mean, other than that, they're doing full class loads. It's not like they have time to go out to the parade field and drill.
Yeah. So I was, OCS guy, all that stuff. I went to West Point thinking that it would be, and come to find out, they don't even exercise in the morning. They're in class like 7 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
And then they're studying until like 11 o'clock at night. It's intense.
It's a ball buster for sure.
Like they need like, I don't know, 90 credit hours. They get like 140 or something like that. Cause
oh, wow.
Yeah. How many they're doing. It's its own world up there. I learned that real quick. So I got this small little piece, and I said, hey, if you want to think unconstrained, because I had just worked for a 4-star, like, look, here are the things I would change. One of those was to create a research center in the military program. Because most people think of military science, they think of like rank structure and things like that because of military science and R2C. Military sciences is actually all of war and warfare. It should be like PhD level stuff. So I said, create a research center, and we started the Modern War Institute, which is a research center now at West Point, which I helped stand up. And its job was to research modern war, like things going on right now, and weave that back into the academy curriculum in like things like the summer training scenarios. Like, what are they facing? Are they facing, do with the Kalashnikov or, something bigger, badder, the tactics from the. So we developed this academy, which is weird. There's like 30 research centers at West Point. I mean, there's like civil mechanical engineering, you name it, but there wasn't one about war. So
you would think that would be the place that it would be,
right? And there's no other place. So we also kind of like the question about the jump, like why? So we'd get this question about why do you need a research center at war at West Point? It trains cadets.
They become officers who become leaders.
Yeah, but why not the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania?
You should do it there too.
Well, the problem is that there's no other place where the Army has invested so much in PhDs. At West Point, there's a PhD in everything, nuclear sciences, psychology, you name it. All the investment in the Army. These are all uniformed personnel teaching the classes. They're civilians as well, but that's one of the reasons why is that the Army's intellectual
horsepower, for lack of a better word,
is there. So we stood up the research center, start taking cadets in the summers out to recent conflicts like Bosnia, Sri Lanka, things like that. I was loving life. So did that for the last 4 years. Now it's time for me to make a decision. Well, my wife got cancer during that time. Went through all that, which was really amazing the way the Army treated us during that time and the way West Point, because normally it's like, here's your option to get out. Again, you can go get assigned to this treatment center, and she didn't want that. So dual mastectomy, all that while we're there. Her chain of command kept her in position, all that. She's really a Wonder Woman. But at the end of that time in 2018, the Army could no longer keep us together. Like, you need to either go do this assignment 2 or 3 years away from your family, or I had over 20 years now. 25 years.
Or that crack you see over there is the door.
That's right. Which is legit. It's the system, right? I understood enough now.
Yeah.
There's a reason for that. Although the other militaries do it differently. Other militaries allow people, so this thing we call DOTMA, which is up or out, is because of this triangle. Like, we can only, it's the engine has to work like this. Not all the militaries do like that. But so at the age of, since I entered at 17, at 37, like you, I mean, I could get out. So I'd actually did 25 because we were at West Point. There's no reason. As I'm leaving, they asked me, do I still want to work and do, because I had no idea what I would do. I was just going to follow the wife, be Mr. Mom.
Yep.
She actually, we knew she was deploying like a month or two after I was retiring. The way the funding systems work at West Point, they asked me, do I want to keep doing what at that point I had started doing a lot of, which is urban operation warfare research. So I started writing. I actually found a love for writing there too, which I wish somebody would have introduced me to. I know you used to do a blog.
Yeah.
I found a love of writing.
I love it too, but I can do a podcast to a deeper level and faster than I can when I write. It takes me a long time to write stuff.
Yeah, I mean, so this is Mark Twain, right? I would have written you something shorter, but I didn't have the time. Yeah. I found so there was a mad scientist we hired for this research center he had worked at USA Today. Like, he had no business working with the military. Like, he literally would have like crazy hair and stuff, but he was like a PhD, but also he had worked in newspapers. He taught a class on how to write an op-ed, which I thought meant like opinion piece. It doesn't. It means opposite editorial.
Oh.
Well, that was lesson number 1.
Learn something new every day,
right?
like I said. Yeah.
It was like lesson number 1. Like, what? Yeah, and he taught a class on how to write articles. So man, I can give this a shot. I'm in academia. I just stood up a research center. I better put my mouth where my money is and start producing. Because one of the things we determine makes somebody world class in research is that you're actually producing something. I disagree with you on the podcast. I agree. I have a podcast too, and I know people have pushed you to write a book.
Not going to happen.
Not going to happen. I took my podcast, and it'll not this book, but it'll be a book next month
of episodes that you have recorded.
Yep.
People have hit me up about doing that as well. We'll see.
Yeah.
I need another project. Like I need another hole in my head right now.
I understand that for sure.
Yeah.
So he taught me he gave me kind of the basics. So I said, let me give this a shot. I wrote one article for a place called War on the Rocks about Ranger School is not a leadership school, because I don't think it is. If it was a leadership school, they teach you leadership. It's a test, right? It's a system. And then I wrote an article. The second article I wrote in my life was about how we were in patrol in 2008. We got hit by an IED. It was actually an RKG-3 grenade thrown over a T-wall, which are like those pineapple ones that are supposed to parachute out and take out tanks. It didn't work. The guy threw it over the things. It hit the ground in between our Humvees and then skyrocketed over to the side and killed an Iraqi kid.
That sucks.
Yeah. Really traumatic to the team.
Yeah, I bet.
Who are helping deal with that. That night I went out to visit. I of course went to the location, got a debrief from the PL, wrap it up, let's get back. We get back to our cop. I went to go talk to the platoon because I could tell that it had really jacked them up seeing all this. And they were all on the internet. They were all talking back home. They weren't talking to each other. So I wrote this op-ed in 2015 about this. Like, I think there's something here. And I, for some reason, sent it to the New York Times. And the New York Times took it. Which even the mad scientists who had been literally doing it for like 20 years, is, what do you mean they accepted it? It's like hitting the lottery, I guess.
And by accepted it, you mean they published it in their medium?
Correct. As a New York Times op-ed in the actual print paper, which I didn't know at the time. Like, I'm nobody. I don't know anything about writing. That is like winning the lottery. So I got thousands of emails, 2 book deals about this thing that I was trying to say, that I thought social media was impeding building cohesion and for soldiers to deal with combat.
Social media or the connectivity?
The connectivity. But social media is a
mechanism for that. Yeah.
Mechanism. At the time, it was
probably video calls more than anything at the time.
It's a little bit of everything. So I try to give examples in a book of, now we're talking about dealing with connected soldiers in war. It's 2003, we were literally writing on MRE boxes.
I wrote no letters and did 1 phone call when we left country.
Yeah. We were writing on MRE boxes, sending them home. But 2008, they could FaceTime.
Yeah.
Same thing when my wife left in 2018, my kids could FaceTime every night.
Yeah. There's pros and cons to that for sure.
Huge pros and cons. I think
probably more cons than pro.
No, I mean, so I couldn't finish this book until I went through it. So I was the dad at home with 3 kids, wanting mom, FaceTime mom every night as that was possible. And then to where it got to a point where the kids didn't want to talk to her anymore. Like, no, I don't want to talk to her. Things like the stresses on the soldier, the stresses on the family. It's something, it's real.
Yeah.
And I point out in the book how these soldiers were living a combat life. So they would come together, they go on patrol, they would come back, and then they would go back to their online lives or connect with social support networks outside the family. So I wrote that op-ed, 2 book deals. I didn't know how to write a book. I didn't know how to write an article. And then I got to the point where I loved writing, and then like any aggressive military person, like, oh, this is a challenge. So I placed an article in every newspaper in the United States, and that was just the goal at the point. As part of writing, in 2018, they said, "Do you want to keep doing urban warfare research?" And then that's when I started really becoming the urban guy. Although some of those articles I was writing, I wrote now over 100 plus, were about urban. One of them, which was the one that really drove me to do research on urban, because you find a lane, right? kind of like PhDs.
Yeah, something sticks with you.
And it's actually very encouraging if you find a lane that it's open. And that's really, as I learned for PhDs, it's really hard for them to figure out what they're going to do, because as soon as they open them, go looking like, well, somebody's already done that. Or there's already an expert in that.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. Yeah, PhDs spend a lot of time finding the boundaries of their knowledge, whatever it is their field is. And then they have to present and defend why what they want to look at is never been done.
Yeah.
That's really hard to do in war.
Yeah. Fuck, that would be really hard to do.
And then who are you?
Except for mega cities.
Mega cities, right? Although even that, there's urban sciences where people talk about the development of that. But yeah, fighting in mega cities, which is, it actually became a dirty word. The Army, we created a video, and that video was shown to Congress and all that stuff. It got to the point where the Army's like, stop showing people that. Because you're scaring people.
Well, that's why you're showing it to them.
Right. But
maybe pay attention over here.
So big Army, you don't tell a big military, I don't want to be service centric, they can't do anything. Like you can't, everything you're doing, the entire way, this is what I studied for that for a year, was force design. Like how do you design your military? Most people don't understand that the Army is actually designed against very specific scenarios. They're high level Pentagon defense planning scenarios. Like literally somebody's thought of like, if World War III breaks out against this person, it would be in this location, and this is the size of the military I would need to respond to it. If Korea flares up, this is exactly the numbers. This is the type of units, all this stuff. It's called force design. At that moment, out of the scenarios that are top secret, there was not a single one that had an Army unit fighting in an urban area.
Which is going to probably become more likely, considering we, as a population center, keep growing and growing and growing and getting more dense and dense and dense.
Right, which I used to start with that. Like,
so you found your lane.
I found a lane. Because of one article, though, actually. The article was concrete. I don't know if, I'm sure you didn't, but my 2008 deployment, I was concrete king. All I did was put in concrete walls.
No, that's not what I did on deployments.
Yeah, no. I killed shitheads too, but in the day, we were putting up walls, we were building fenced communities, because the number one threat in Iraq at that moment wasn't terrorists. It was people killing, mass casualty events, killing other Iraqis.
Yeah.
It was just violence. That was the metric. Yeah. So if something blew up in my area, that's your fault. It doesn't, getting to the network was one thing, but some of this was building gated communities and putting gangs in charge of those communities, which is what we did, called Sons of Iraq.
Yeah.
We paid gangs to bring violence down, acceptable enough to where we could leave.
Yeah.
But I did that through concrete. We actually had a major battle in 2008 called the Battle of Slaughter City, where an entire city of 2 million flared up. I don't know if you remember that. The Jaish al-Mahdi.
Yeah, no, I do.
So the solution was put a wall around them. We built a wall around the entire city. And what it caused them to do is to come out of their stronghold and shoot at us like dummies. And then you send a 120 round down the street, takes care of that, or a Bradley 25 millimeter.
Yeah.
We ended up putting a wall around them to where they literally extinguished themselves fighting the wall as it was surrounding them, and then controlled the inner ins and out. We never went into the city. So we fought an entire battle, the Battle of Slaughter City. We weren't allowed to go in the city.
Interesting concept.
Yeah.
Probably saved a lot of lives.
Yeah, a circumvention. Yeah, because we got our butt kicked in Slaughter City before, like 2004.
Well, I mean, you're the urban warfare expert here. It's tough. That's three-dimensional chess for sure.
So I wrote this article about concrete. Like, concrete is the most effective weapon. You have to give it a fancy title. And it went viral. So that's me, that just encouraged me to keep doing it. And then and that's where I found my lane, and that's what I've been doing for over a decade now, is studying urban warfare specifically. So then 24 February, Ukraine kicks off.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how did that lead to you heading over to Ukraine?
So 24 February, I'm working for the Modern War Institute. Of course, we're tracking this. We're doing a podcast about it. We're listening to all the experts on whether Russia would invade or not. I'm kind of watching on the periphery, but I'm doing my research.
Did it play out the way that you thought it would? Were you at the camp?
Once I saw it start unfolding, absolutely. And this is where, so 24 February, Russia invades. It invades over 7 fronts. It literally, over 100,000+ Russian soldiers invade, but 7 different fronts. But there was only one goal, which was, just like us, take down the regime. Mm-hmm. get to the capital city, penetrate it, raise the Russian flag over the Ukrainian government. That was the only objective. We call it the strategic goal of the war. Just like our invasion of Baghdad, take Saddam out.
Yep.
Of course, 2 weeks later, as I'm sitting on the ground, the mission changed.
Yeah.
But we accomplished the mission, just like Taliban. Take the Taliban out.
But then put them back into power 20 years later.
Yes. You've covered that enough, but don't get me started on.
It's tough. It's a tough one to swallow. Somebody who spent a lot of time over there and is, there's a lot of literal and figurative blood, sweat, and tears.
I will say, I haven't heard anybody say this, but I will say this from my research: is to fight a counterinsurgency for an illegitimate government is insanity.
I agree.
So one of the most corrupt. There's a corruption index of all countries of the world, and Afghanistan sat at the very bottom of that for the last 20 years. So for 20 years of us being there, it's been at the bottom of the most corrupt nations in the world. It's been at not at the bottom, at the top. It's one of them.
I know what you meant, yeah.
Yeah. So you can't fight a counterinsurgency for a government. It's just insanity. Yeah. As a strategic goal, right? Soldiers will do whatever mission you give them and do it well. But as a strategic goal, understanding now, having been a part of the National Security Council, understanding the decisions are not part of the council, right? But being in these places like Where's Waldo, and understanding how these things are made, the objectives, I understand it. So Russia, ponies up, attempts it. It's going to take out Ukraine.
They attempted it for sure.
It did, legit.
They came storming.
And there's one battle that mattered: the Battle of the capital city, Battle of Kyiv. They had to get.
Is that how you say it? Kyiv?
Yeah, Kyiv.
I've heard Kiev.
No, Kyiv.
I've heard Kyiv.
So I've had to learn. I've become the urban guy. Which luckily I had the freedom to do whatever the hell I want.
Yeah.
So I get paid to. I have no product. So just John, do great things. So I've had to go deep into Ukraine. So if you say Kiev, it's actually the Russian version. So Kyiv is the Ukrainian way to say it. So you can say it a couple ways. I've gotten dude, stop. Because I would go on Wolf Blitzer, Don Limp, and I would say that, and people would just destroy me on the social media.
I've said this many times recently. The internet is an IQ test, and the comment section is where you post your results.
Yeah.
So.
24th February, there's only one goal. So thousands of soldiers moving out against thousands of cities.
How long do you think Russia thought it would take to achieve their goal?
I don't have to think. I know. 72 hours.
Really?
Yes.
Ambitious.
Legit, though.
Yeah. I mean, I appreciate it, but ambitious.
It should have fell in 72 hours based on all the intelligence up to that point. And there are a lot of people, it wasn't me, who spent their lifetime in this analysis. In that 5-sided building in the Pentagon, there's a lot of people there.
Yeah.
I don't think people realize how many people work in that building. I mean, there's a lot of people that do analysis, and a lot of people do a Russian military analysis. Everybody thought that would fall. There are some people that thought, you could say, I said it wouldn't. The one goal, as an urban warfare expert, I was analyzing what was being sent against this capital city to achieve the one objective of the entire war. Wasn't to take it as in surround it and clear the city of 3 million. It's a big city. Mm-hmm. It was to penetrate it and to get to the president. Didn't have to kill him. They just had to get to the building and raise the Russian flag.
Yeah, they just needed to remove him.
And then the war, even if he fled.
Yeah.
Think Afghanistan. If your government flees,
it's game over.
It's over. You can fight. Yes, you can fight a big insurgency, but the dude stayed for one. But the Russians just had to get into the middle of it. So the Russians try a bold plan. You know how Kyiv unfolded?
No.
Oh, great. So whatever I say, you just believe it.
Fire away.
Okay. I know what it takes to penetrate a capital city based on historical analysis, right? How many of these battles have been fought in the past? And some people like to use the drive to Baghdad as an example of the way to do it right, even though Baghdad wasn't defended, barely at all.
And we outpaced a lot of our support columns. It was actually kind of a shit show.
But the way the army, so this is, again, being in the puzzle palace, these stories are what militaries hang their futures on. So a lot of people don't understand. I have some amazing podcasts with some Israelis, because Israelis have a lot of urban warfare experience. So there's a tank commander who's in Yom Kippur War who, within the first hours of the war, loses his entire tank battalion. It's gone. But the U.S. military studied the Yom Kippur War and hung our future on that war without really understanding what happened in that war. So air-land battle, the Big Five, the tank, the Bradley, the Apache, all came out of an analysis supposedly of the Yom Kippur War. Because we have to look at major wars like we have to in Ukraine to redesign what we're doing.
But you need to look at them objectively and correctly.
When you have like 50,000 people look at them, it depends on, you have to be in the room.
Yeah.
Some of these decisions get made in a room this size.
No shit.
Yes. Some of them. And some of them are personality based. So there's been some personalities in the U.S. military who have redesigned the way that the military is approaching. Like Don Starry for the U.S. military was a general who wrote a lot and put the kind of the intellectual framework back on it. But same thing with people like Omar Bradley and things like this who would go over to World War II. We used to have a lot of programs of combat observers. We don't anymore, which is really interesting. We don't send, unless you're in some special programs, people into combat zones that aren't ours to learn the lessons. We'll gather lessons, but I mean, even if you read that it's fiction, but Once an Eagle,
Never read it.
Yeah, it's like this big. I had to read it just because it's a cultural thing. Like like it's almost like popular culture. Like in the military, like if you make a reference to old school or something like a movie, people will make reference to this book, like Don't Be a Madansky or something. So I had to read that book. So I was looking back to Ukraine on how Russia would have to take it. I can tell you how they tried to take it. So first thing they did was attempted a joint forcible entry. They tried to take a very large airfield in the center of Ukraine, or the center of Kyiv. It's 10 miles from the capital, called the airfield of Hostomel. It's really a special operations mission, right? So they sent up to 30 helicopters full of VDV, their version of special forces, into a airfield within the opening hours of the attack. They did a kind of shock and awe, like they struck
for sure
air defenses, things like that, which is so right before this happened, right? So the U.S. military, everybody's telling Ukraine to get ready. They're getting ready to invade you. I don't know if you tracked that on TV or anything.
I heard a lot of people rumbling about it, but then you'd hear, of course, there has to be banter and argument back and forth. So it gets to this place of like, who the fuck do you listen to?
Yeah. So it's the Ukrainians who said, stop telling the world that Russia's getting ready to invade. Even though the U.S. military is like, dude, they're on your border.
Yeah, massing.
And we had a couple podcasts with like Russian military experts, like, it isn't necessarily that they're there, but look what they have there. They got a field hospital there. They got a field hospital here. They have the combat rangers. It's like what they have marshaled. Like they're getting ready to invade you, dude. And the president of the Ukraine said on national news, stop telling people that they're invading us. I'm here on the ground. I know better.
Roger that.
Roger that. And then that translates, which I really wish we would, now that I've had a little bit of experience, somebody would teach more to the military about this connection between political and military objectives. So the political apparatus made a decision that they would not prepare for war, as in like go into a defensive positions, like go out and meet the Russians. So the president of Ukraine told, let's talk specifically about the city of Kyiv, the one brigade of Ukrainian forces were in the capital city of Kyiv the day that it was invaded. And
how many people is that?
It's about 4,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So a mechanized brigade too, right? So mechanized vehicles, tanks, artillery, things like that. But one brigade for a city of 3 million, that is like 400 kilometers. I mean, it's just huge.
How many people do they have in their military in general?
At that moment, about 100,000.
Okay.
Russia invaded. Russia has about 1 million, about 800,000 on active duty, but they invaded with about 120,000. But they had just 4,000, if that, in the capital city. Because I don't even know if they thought that Russia would be so bold to try to take the capital. Because they thought Russia had been fighting a war along the eastern border of Ukraine since before 2014. Like they're in defensive positions along the eastern whole border. Like a third of the Ukrainian military was on that border. They thought that's where the Russians would try to come.
Yeah.
Although they could see them everywhere else.
Yeah.
But this dude, the president and the national, said, you military, which I can't imagine. And I went to Kyiv and interviewed these guys. Like, you cannot be in position.
Ballsy.
Saved their lives, actually. Because what do you do if you're invading a country? Step one is attack anything you can with joint fires. Anything that's seen or is there, blow it up, right? Shock and awe.
And if they're not there,
then they weren't.
Interesting.
So that's Murphy, like luck, right?
Yeah.
So 24 February, Russians send in, so they blow a lot of things up, like airfields, air defense pitches. They land up to 30 helicopters, and there's videos of it. It's just crazy. videos of the special forces going in to seize this airfield to create an air lodgement. Sounds a lot like what I trained for in the Ranger Regiment.
Yeah.
They get there, they get on the ground. CNN interviews the dude 4 hours. Have you not seen that?
No.
The CNN dude is interviewing a Russian soldier on that airfield within hours of the invasion.
Fuck.
And you see like Russians like moving, like moving stuff in to get into position. They're like frantic. The video actually shows like them like full rucksack with AT4s like getting off. So they drop a couple hundred special forces in the airfield. But what's interesting is what do you call this joke? It's a bad joke, but what do you do when you drop a bunch of special forces in and you don't give them reinforcement? What do you call them? POWs.
It's accurate.
Yeah. So they land on the airfield. We had given the Ukrainians Stingers. So the Russians were never able to get air superiority. So they couldn't have close air support. Very limited. They had very limited air capabilities.
Just due to that threat.
And they didn't get all there. Remember the air defense, now there's reporting that the Ukrainian military even pulled some stuff on purpose besides just being not allowed to be in position, but they actually hid stuff.
Not a bad call.
Bold move, Cotton.
Yeah.
So they land, which is impressive, to get 30 helicopters in there and drop that air package in there. Well, what they didn't know is that on that airfield was a National Guard unit who wasn't there. Most of the unit was actually deployed east because we thought there was invasion, but the artillery unit who was also hidden. So within hours of them landing, the Ukrainians just started dumping artillery onto it.
Well, people may not understand how shitty that is who've never been on the receiving end of mortars or artillery. It's the worst.
I've only been like a couple times, and it's not a good feeling.
No, and you hear that fucking coming too.
Yep. So they decimate. Well, also, and legit, there are some special forces in this area too. Within 6 hours, a special forces element it's told to rush to that airfield. Because the Ukrainians can't have anybody help them at this point. They're not a member of NATO. No country can help Ukraine in this moment, or it's an act of war. It elevates.
Yeah.
And by help means physically help them.
Yeah, I was going to say you can provide
intelligence
and probably equipment.
Any equipment you want.
Yep.
Stingers.
Yep.
Thousands of Stingers.
Javelins.
Thousands of javelins. So they knew something was happening at Hostomel. Luck had it that they had artillery. They start blowing it apart. They send a special forces team in to do a counterattack against this now desperate, of the most elite Russian Spetsnaz VDV airborne unit they could put in there, high risk, high mission, with no help. So they get in, and the special force guy said it was just like playing an arcade game.
Yeah, you can get the floor mopped with you.
They mopped the floor. But what was happening? So that wasn't the only plan. Right, it's joint forcible entry is a plan. Seize an air lodgement, start landing, like you said. Like, I just start air landing heavy stuff. Just rush them. Right, it's speed and joint force. That gets frustrated. They also had inserted like intelligence officers.
I bet
into and attempted to get to the president. So there's some crazy stuff happening night one, like Ukrainian soldiers in Ukrainian uniform deep inside the city doing crazy stuff. So they had this other arm of a infiltration and takedown of like little green men, like they're special people. Yep. Didn't work. I saw pictures of lots of them captured. Yeah. That didn't work. So they had their full out, now conventional plan, which was 2 massive formations of mechanized infantry pushing through Belarus.
Just columns,
coming down. 2 of them. Some people thought it was just out of Chernobyl. And there was another one coming from a different city, headed towards the city. And again, they didn't have to encircle shit. They just had to get into the middle of it. So the Ukrainians know that that's coming. By the time it shows up to the airfield, because Ukrainians don't ever take the airfield back. They just kill everything on it. And they also drop enough artillery and munitions that the airfield can't be used, which is, again, Ranger Regiment, like, you got to protect the airfield so it can be used as an enlargement. Yeah. They destroy it. So that's off the plan. But the vehicles get there about 6 hours late, and there's nothing left. So the 2 mechanized now penetrations are, well, okay, that failed. The infiltration of my special people failed, but I'm just going to go in with mass and punch through into the city. Well, this gets to the part of my work, which is that you either understand cities in that city exactly. And cities are people, buildings, and infrastructure to support those buildings, or you understand how to fight in cities, and you have to know both. The Ukrainians understand their city a lot better than Russians did.
Yeah.
So they dropped 300 bridges. How do you get in there? They opened the dams to 3 different rivers, because this is late, early spring. If you're a mechanized formation, you're not getting off the road in Ukraine. So they literally, and this was mind blowing when I went to. This is why I went. I went to deconstruct how 4,000 soldiers
defended that city essentially
against the second most powerful military of the world.
Yeah.
And made it so the Russians could not achieve their strategic goal and had to retreat and defeat them. It's literally the biggest defeat of the modern era.
Are they getting their asses kicked as much as some people are saying?
Who?
The Russians.
Yes.
Yeah, it sounds like they're just getting fucking picked off, isolated and picked off.
I mean, once they failed in this first objective, just like us, their mission changed. And then they had a gain, but there's so many problems with the Russian military system that, because of the support that we've given the Ukrainians, and oh, by the way, so this is the part that gets you to how they defended a city. They didn't. It was more like Red Dawn than it was fighting.
Wolverines.
Well, so I think it was porcupines more than Wolverines. So the Ukrainians had thought through how to defend the city, of course. Although they didn't have any position. And the hostile airfield thing was sheer luck.
Yeah.
I think it was really luck. Blowing all the bridges, planned. Buy yourself some time. Flooding the rivers, genius. So they literally rose to levels. They flooded an entire village of thousands of people in doing this. And they flooded all the rivers to bring the water up so you couldn't cross them with military vehicles. But here's where they actually won, is they handed out 18,000 AK-47s on the first day.
And let people just get after it.
So 18,000 weapons and 2 magazines per.
I would have liked a little bit more than that.
Yeah. So what happened is that what everybody discounted was when you take a city of 3 million and say, rise up, is what literally the message over the radio went. The Russians have invaded, rise up. This wasn't Red Dawn yet. This was Red Defense.
Yeah.
They had to defend their cities. They'd already blown the bridges. So now they had created funnels into the city. And there was only a couple of ways into the city. And these Russians, who had to stay on the roads at this point, now are running into Grandpa. And by that, I mean literally Grandpa.
Yeah, but Grandpa, who's lived there forever and knows every angle, every nook and cranny, where to force you so you can't turn your vehicle around. That's actually a nightmare. It
is. What you imagine, doesn't matter who you got. If it's JSOC, whatever, you send me in, and now the government just turned tens of thousands of people and armed them and sent them into the streets. It'd be a nightmare.
To defend their hometown, and it's your first time there, and maybe your map software is not as up to date as it should be.
So this is crazy thing on that is that the Ukrainians were just ingenious, right? Nobody would have figured that they would just rise up. The people, like 4,000 dudes can't defend a city. 40,000 people can't.
Yeah.
So the Ukrainians spray painted all the signs. Like this is all like in a day too. They took down all the road signs. They spray painted them all. I thought that was like a little bit. I went and visited. Think about like L.A. and every road sign is gone. So the Russians couldn't. That wouldn't help them. Yeah. They wouldn't navigate. And they formed these blocking. They left places open, complex ambushes, and the Russians that went against Kiev are just getting demolished. So where I come into this, right? I've studied it. I'm going to write the report. I went there and traveled there, but I actually interjected myself into this battle because of social media. So on 25 February, somebody sent me a Twitter message saying, what would you do in this situation? So I wrote a Twitter thread that said, look, I've studied urban warfare a little bit. If I was in that city right now, here are the things I would do. And I laid out a multi-thread tweet on I would block every road, park roads, I'd stay defended. I would attack from the upper levels of floors, this, and this. And that tweet went viral. It was seen by like 20 million people because all the communications were still open.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainian government hadn't done anything other than handed out weapons and then put on the radio, go out and resist. But nobody knew how to resist.
Yeah.
So that tweet, and then because that went viral, I started putting out tweets of images of like, do this, not this. And I got in a lot of trouble, right? Because a U.S. affiliated person giving guidance to Ukraine on how to defend.
Say you're more than deeply affiliated,
Yeah.
almost like a citizen, previous military officer, perhaps.
Affiliated with a government organization. That's what I meant.
Gotcha.
So I ended up having to. I didn't lose my jobs, but I had to take off. I had to.
Listen, you're not fired, but also you don't work here anymore.
Exactly. If you do not stop.
Yeah.
That
door is cracking again. Yeah.
And my wife was very concerned, and I didn't stop. Matter of fact, those tweets became a manual. I titled it, because I've been studying this for a while, the mini manual for the urban defender.
Yep.
It's for what if you were a citizen, you had no clue about military, what would you tell them to do? So I put this manual together. Without me knowing, the Ukrainian military took my manual and put it on their website for resistors, and then they just started mass printing it.
And then Elon Musk sent them Starlink so they could talk.
That's right. The people discount that, and I've asked a lot of people since then, like, could you take down Starlink?
Comms is a fucking huge issue, as you know.
So I went there and I've gathered all these stories, but there was a story of grandma on the outskirts of Kyiv, like way out. Grandma sees a convoy sitting in front of her house full of ammo trucks, fuel trucks, all that. She picks up her phone, uses an app that they had turned from a government, like almost your records, and tweet and basically messages that this convoy is sitting out there. Ukrainians somehow diverted a TB2 drone and destroyed that thing. A massive impact to the forces on that side of Kyiv was because grandma called it in.
And had connectivity.
Yeah. So I did this. Well, once after that first tweet happened, then I get an email from, I think it was Wolf Blitzer. Like, hey, I want to talk to you about.
Got a few questions.
I have never been on TV in my life at this point.
Yeah.
Not that I can remember.
Did they put you in one of those weird rooms where you can only see a camera lens and you're like delayed on the earpiece?
It was all virtual, but you're looking at a black screen.
Yeah.
You don't see them.
It's not awkward at all.
No. And then I learned. So I think it was Don Lemon first, actually. It was seen in Don Lemon first, day one, black screen. Have a talk like, look, Russia is going to get hurt at this point. They haven't sent enough. It's falling apart. Yes, you can defend a city. Blah. I was basically deconstructing the attack of Kyiv, which is the only battle that mattered at that moment. There are other battles happening all across the country, but that was the strategic one. Well, I did that interview, hung up the phone, and all of a sudden my phone starts ringing off the network. I didn't know how this worked. That each producer, doesn't matter what agency, all of them, CNN, Fox, MSNBC, they all have their own producers team.
Yeah, they're all out there headhunting too, trying to find.
That's right. So somebody saw me on TV, and all of a sudden they're like, "Who the hell is this?" Well, also the ticker said where I was from, the Modern War Institute at West Point, which I got calls the very next morning, like, "Don't ever go on TV again."
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Surprised they waited till the next morning to call you.
Yeah. So then I went on the next night as Colonel John Spencer with the California State Guard, because long story, but I now am a member of the California State Guard, live in Colorado, but because they want to own some urban warfare, so they brought me in. It's, a couple states have these things. I did that, and then Colonel John Spencer, the next morning, the governor's office calling, like, "Don't ever do that again." So I like, this is you can keep doing this, your tweets and your news interviews.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing, then it was a flood, and I was doing 15 to 20 interviews a day, analyzing. Somehow I became the dreaded talking head, analyzing the urban battles of Ukraine.
How do you think it's going to all play out?
So it's at this point, so the war changed, right? They lost the Battle of Kyiv. They retreated, tucked tail, ran, which is amazing.
It just got fucked up on the way out, too.
Destroyed. But also did some horrendous things while they were there. Literally, and that's what got me in trouble. I actually am part of these forums now where I get information before news does. Yeah. Like these forums of Ukrainians and all that stuff. So I saw photos of Bucha before Bucha aired, and it really pissed me off and really upset me that soldiers would do that type of literally massacring, raping. They tucked tail. They did some awful things while they were doing it, and wherever they were. It wasn't just Bucha. There's actually been like multiple Buchas. Then they said, okay, that was a feint. We weren't really trying to take Ukraine. We're just trying to take eastern Ukraine. We'll end up. Russia will lose.
Just by attrition, you think? Slowly over time?
So, again, because I've studied this, there's killing people matters, but that isn't the only thing that matters. Like, what is Ukraine's goal? Is to take territory and control it. Oh, by the way, the entire world is rallied against them. 50 nations, economic sanctions.
Yeah.
I mean, Putin is like one of the richest people in the world, but his economy is not the strongest in the world.
What's your take on the reports that come out sometimes that he's very sick?
I don't get into conspiracy theories, so I try to stay in my lane.
It's just a theory. It's not a conspiracy yet.
It's a theory that with no who could know, and
somebody on TV said it.
Yes,
no.
That's right. I
had heard that one for a while. There's he's like deathly. I'm like, oh, okay, maybe.
Yeah. It's so crazy. And the long table thing doesn't help, and this is the first fully connected war that's ever been fought. I honestly believe that. It's not the first social war where information gets out, right?
Yeah.
Think about the urban battle. The biggest turning point of Vietnam was the Tet Offensive. And when Cronkite, who had just happened to be visiting during the Tet Offensive, came back, the direction of the war for the United States changed.
Yeah.
Because he brought back information but now I could watch live feeds of Kyiv, the Battle of Kyiv, live feeds through the internet. This will change the war, I think, war in the future in all aspects. I mean, these defenders who defended within a nuclear bunker for 80 days, you didn't hear about the siege of Mariupol?
Mm-mm.
So this is like more legendary than Alamo or any other story or Spartans at Thermopylae. 3,000 Ukrainian fighters in the city of Mariupol, which is like a 200,000 plus city, held down 20,000 Russian soldiers for 80 days. They were inside of a tunnel complex that was...
The Ukrainians were?
Yes. And there was nothing the Russians could do. They actually ended up taking the entire city and just besieging the factory. It was a steel complex, which actually had like nuclear... It was really built for war. Nuclear bunkers inside of it.
Oh, shit.
They held that down. And what's so important, eventually they brokered a surrender. But one of the first things that the helicopters, which is an amazing story, how the helicopters got in there while this entire city is being besieged by Russians, the helicopters flew them in Starlink. So there's this commander, a major, the highest ranking guy in this, who's doing literally like not a podcast show, but like lectures with universities from within this
no shit
bunker. Yes.
I hope Elon gets some credit for the connectivity.
No, he should.
Yeah.
He should. Absolutely. But they held off 20,000 soldiers. Look, they eventually lost, but they prevented the other massive fronts from ever losing because these 20,000 soldiers couldn't tied up. So it's going to become part of their national identity for forever. The siege of Mariupol and the Azovstal factory is what it's called.
Do you think there's any way for Russia to save face at this point, or is it just turned against them?
So I dealt with that in the beginning. I'm not a Russia expert or a Putin expert.
Yeah.
I don't think they need to save face. He has complete control of information. If he said,
that's actually a good point. Yeah.
Yeah. If he said tomorrow the war's over, we won, we're bringing our troops home, nobody could say there's no face to be saved. He has that much control over the Russian population. So this is literally one man's vendetta, and that's why you have, which is natural. This is why I think the Russians will lose when you have soldiers on the front line deserting, refusing to fight.
Yeah, I had heard reports of that.
And they extinguished some of their most elite, right? Like you can build an elite soldier, right? A super dedicated. You can actually take them from their young years, like me, and influence them to believe in nation and no matter what assignment. A lot of those are dead.
Yeah,
and they're letting prisoners out of prison, and these aren't rumors. These are like facts. They're conscripts. They have a conscript system. Not all their army is conscript, but they have a biannual conscript enlistment. Basically, you have mandatory service, kind of like other places like Israel. You do a year, or you can contract for 2 years. They can't make those rotations. They can't fill those allotments of people. Military, he can't fight the way he's fighting now forever.
How long do you think they'll hold out?
So winter's going to change this situation a lot, right?
As it tends to in Russia.
It does. In Finland...
Wouldn't be the first time that they've had some experience with that.
So here's my opinion. Russia lost a long time ago. By every measure I'm a student of war.
Yeah.
So war is the pursuit of political objectives. Warfare is the actual fighting. Putin lost on every measure, right? His number one goal was to take Ukraine. Never going to happen now. Just not, it's impossible. So he could cut off a part of Ukraine and say that that's Russia.
Yeah.
He wanted to get NATO off his doorstep. That was actually his words.
It didn't really go his way.
No, he increased the border with NATO by 400 miles or something like that,
Yeah.
with Finland and Sweden. His military showed that it's not the second most powerful in the world. We would have mopped the floor with them months ago if this would have been, even though in every conversation I've ever been part of until this war, Russia was a peer adversary.
That's the way it was described,
Yeah.
internally as well too, or talked about doctrinally, yeah.
So strategically, there's four forms of power: diplomatic, information, military, and economic. By every measure, Russia has already lost and can never gain that stuff back.
It's a rough road in front of him.
So will he keep killing Ukrainians? Of course.
Yeah.
Will the Ukrainians have to sacrifice a lot to get them out of Ukraine? Of course. So this is the problem in this isn't political, as in like Republican, Democrat. People that try to say that Ukraine is not about it's not our fight. You have a better understanding of when the nation sends people to war, why they're sending them to war.
Yeah.
Is our country being attacked? Of course it is. On a daily basis, of course it is. But militaries are in pursuit of national objective, national interest. It can be defense, of course. But our number one threat in all our national defense strategies, documents, all this stuff was Russia. Russia just broke the global international order by saying, I'm a nuclear power. I can invade any country I want that's not a part of NATO. If we would allow them to do that, I honestly believe it would spark World War III. Because after World War II, we put in all these rules of what nations could and couldn't do. But even if you're just a more tactical level guy, who's Russia? Is Russia America's enemy?
I would say that's a very broad question.
Yeah.
Russia, a country, Putin, I would say yes.
Yeah.
The individual citizen, probably not.
Yeah. So this is
the people throwing the power levers, probably a different answer,
Yeah. So it's geopolitics.
Yeah.
If all of our documents from day one said our two biggest threats in the world are China and Russia, the Joint Chief of Staff, General Milley, has said it right. Like, out of this war, we want Russia weaker than it's ever been in its history and never able to do this again. Never able to upset the global international order. Because if it does, then everything that we flourish, and this is where Americans, I think, kind of just don't know, that everything that we enjoy, whether it's prices of things or our freedoms around the world, is all interconnected by all these different countries with shared relationships. And it's called the global international order. It means economic, it means political, and like who's good guys, who's bad guys. Russia's trying to completely redesign the board just because he has nuclear weapons and we won't do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I think the goal for the United States is a weaker Russia, but we've also said in our history that we want to protect our freedoms and the freedoms of people that want to be free. I traveled to Ukraine a couple months ago. Not only did I find a lot of badass people, like people that we talk about, like we would pull a Red Dawn with our weapons.
Some people would pull a Red Dawn.
Yeah. These dudes did it.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was with veterans. So actually, I thought about writing an article where Red Dawn kind of goes off, gets it wrong. Like, you can't just hand a bunch of civilians weapons and think they're going to do good things. It actually was the backbone of veterans in the communities.
Yeah.
That said, hey, you 20 bubbas, come with me.
Which makes sense. I mean,
Makes
that's
sense.
the power of somebody with experience, knowledge, and leadership.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then there are other leaders will rise up. But if this is about freedom, I went and I met an entire country fighting for freedom. And in my 25 years, I've never met a society like that, where every single person, millions, are fighting to be free.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing for sure.
Yeah, it was really. I travel. This is my dream job. I have a dream job right now. I get to do what I want, write what I want, spend time as a talking head if I want. Although that's died down a lot. I also get to travel the world. I don't think you can understand even battles that I've been a part of unless you walk the ground and walk the different variables, like we do at Gettysburg. So I get to travel the world, and that's why my wife wasn't too happy that, okay, I'm going to Kyiv. What do you mean you're going to Kyiv? Like, I can't say I'm an urban warfare guy. I can't write a book for people how to defend their nation if it's under attack if I haven't been there. And I haven't talked to the people that actually did it.
Yeah.
I did that same thing when I did it. I went to India you know that story about the 2008 Mumbai attacks?
I probably do.
Yeah, it's a very special operations type of event. So 10 terrorists take down a megacity.
Yes.
Yeah, in 3 days. We walked the ground from sea and it's like not, I don't know, but like Navy SEALs kind of stuff. I mean, they boarded a frigate and then took the frigate and then mounted Zodiacs, did a night insertion, moved out in dispersed pairs, attacked 5 sites separately at the exact same time with backpacks of death. But if I had to walk that ground in a mega city like that to understand how 10 guys took down a city of over 15 million.
You know this better than anybody. It takes less than most people would hope.
Well, you rely on chaos.
Well, that most people would probably be like, oh, yeah, for that to happen in the U.S., the Red Army, maybe that's China, maybe that's Russia, who knows, would have to be rolling tanks down the streets. Like, you could really disrupt a lot with not that many people if they were smart about it.
Yeah, context. So I think this is the problem with. So I've studied. I study urban warfare, and I have because of social media, you have an army of haters. But when I say I study urban warfare, I mean everything from urban policing, like that's what I was doing in Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know crap about what I was doing, but I was the mayor, the sheriff, the police. I was everything to a city of 75,000. I had to study all of it. To what we're talking about in Ukraine is large scale peer-on-peer competition. What's required to achieve a goal is a lot different. You're not going to send a small force in to take an enemy-held city with thousands of enemies in there. We've gotten our butt kicked trying.
Yeah, we have.
But the problem is that people need frameworks, and I think this is where I think Evan Haber was talking about it, but it's really that you special forces guys messed up the Army in urban warfare.
Probably.
The clear room battle drill, the center-fed 4-man stack battle drill, which evolved out of the 1970s terrorist tactics.
You're talking about the actual tactics to clear a room?
Yep.
We don't do it. We don't do that shit that way anymore.
The Army does, because
they should really stop.
After the special forces community evolved that to the mainstream media, then Iraq kicked off. I wrote a paper about this, the evolution of entering clear a room. It's called Battle Drill 6 for us. It's ruined the military, in my honest opinion, because it's literally closed our minds to what is needed in urban warfare.
We don't do it that way anymore, though.
Don't tell anybody that. But the Army does.
Because running into a room is a bad idea. The only time we accept that risk now is hostage rescue.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the entire battle drill relies on surprise and speed. So what if you're attacking?
Which works for the first room.
Yeah. and actually in our history, we stopped doing it. First Battle of Fallujah, Second Battle of Fallujah, Ramadi. I know you guys talk about Ramadi a lot. We stopped doing that. It's a tactic used for a very specific circumstance.
Yeah.
But that's not the way people work. They want frameworks. They want drills which work. So in 2005, when there's an evolution, I kind of traced that evolution from closed door special forces to open to the evolution to mainstream.
It
trickles down. Ranger Regiment. I was there when it was trickling. In 2005, we said the entire Army, no matter what your MOS, was required to train, enter, and clear a room.
Really?
Yes. It was a warrior battle drill and task. The entire Army. Didn't matter if you were a fueler. I know you've had Jessica Lynch on here, and friends of mine think that was the event that said you didn't fight back. We need. So these warrior battle.
There probably were a lot more of those types of events that just didn't get the publicity.
Absolutely. But this is human nature. But the entire Army was LARPing, literally LARPing of that tactic. And it has evolved to where when you ask, it doesn't matter, you ask a conventional guy, are you training for urban warfare? They think about enter and clear a room. Despite the fact that in this type of warfare, the future of war, right? Yes, counterinsurgency. This is a problem. Even when I was in 2008, if I told a guy to go do a cordon and knock, what we would do, like we're just searching for weapons, they'd stack on the guy's door. Like, no, I mean knock on his door.
Yeah.
And ask him, can you search his house?
Yeah.
But this is the way the Army.
That's how deeply ingrained it is.
It is. It will take a lot to break, and I'm hoping that I can be a part of that, because common sense that if they know you're there, if you stack on the door, one, somebody from a building away from you is going to shoot you, which some of these videos are helping, like the videos of Ukraine on.
Yeah.
That's not, look, it's a drill, but it's not right now it's the foundation of the conventional army's urban warfare tactics.
Yeah, that's rough. I mean, our enemy does AARs too. Like, oh, they always stack up the same way. They always come in the same way.
Door,
what angles are they looking at? Oh, they have a fatal funnel in the doorway. Like, that's why we changed our tactics. I would say it was it was like 2005, 2006. It was like, no. We need to reevaluate and totally shift. And
the Army will. So I'm a person that kind of tries to show people errors, but the Army will adapt. The problem is that a lot of people will die in that adaptation.
You gotta evolve at the speed of war, which the special operations community can do more rapidly because it's smaller and they have budget. Conventional forces are always going to be a few steps behind.
But this is the problem with urban warfare is how do you train it? Like at that scale, there's two big cities. Like the Army's built like mock cities.
Yep.
I don't know if you've ever been to them, like Range 220 in California.
I've been to smaller ones.
Yeah, these are 500 plus buildings where they will attack with a brigade, right? Because this is kind of conventional. This is about taking ground, not infiltrating and eliminating a certain number of enemy casualties. This is like penetrating enemy defenses and taking urban terrain. It's really hard to practice. If I was king for a day, I would. Right now, it's still a battle drill. Like for all U.S. Army infantry soldiers are required to do battle drill 6, which is 4-man stack, enter and clear a room. I'm surprised you didn't know that.
I don't know much about the Army. This might shock you. I don't know much about the Navy.
No, that doesn't shock me. It's a side. It's a tactics. I teach a course out in California now, which is training planning. I think a lot of these urban battles are lost in planning, like Russia did.
Yeah.
Russia didn't have the redundancies to deal with the failures, right? The branches and sequels to.
Yeah. If you execute a shitty plan well, don't expect a good outcome.
Right, but the enemy will so that's the problem with like taking the drive to Baghdad and the takedown of Baghdad as a thing to hang your future on.
Yeah. Probably couldn't repeat that.
Yeah, you did it well, yes, because
No, it was successful. I don't know if we did it well.
Yeah.
Very important delineation there.
But we as a profession have a real bad app of wanting a model which then to apply into other scenarios. Like it's human nature. I know it is. I have a dream job where I get to be uncomfortable with approaches and my biggest thing right now is just to do case studies. I deal a lot with opinions like, dude, you're wrong. Like we're doing the wrong thing, and I'm trying to get off this whole talking head thing because it's just not. It's tiring to stay on track of every movement of the war.
Yeah, that sounds like it would actually kind of be exhausting.
Yeah,
so where can people find your book then?
Let's
build your writing career.
That's right. I love writing. So this book, Connected Soldiers, is on Amazon. I'm on johnspenceronline.com, which is everything I've ever written is on there. The book it has something to do with that connection that we're talking about, but it's really a memoir of all the ear bite stories, really one sentence. But it's a memoir of my platoon leader and company command time of leading in adversity.
What are you going to do for your next book? I bet you have multiple ideas kicking around up there, don't you?
I do. So next book's already written. It's actually, which I don't know if you know, you have to get any book you write for like 20 years after you get out of the Army, it has to be approved by the Pentagon.
Does it though?
If not, you get things like Not an Easy Day, which are banned from any soldier ever reading it because it has stuff.
What if they find it on their own?
Then they
read it.
You do what your rank can handle. Is what we say. Yeah. like wearing different ranks.
I've heard horror stories about that DoD approval pipeline.
Yes, it's so I have a book that was done almost. I will say that they went through this one really quick, and it was a really easy process. I wrote another one, which I took my podcasts.
That's right. You said you basically condensed them down into written word.
And then they're not just like transcribing the podcast. I actually put like intros and maps and things like that. But I interviewed like commanders of the Second Battle of Fallujah, like all these, and I define what a smart city is, mega cities. Like this, my podcasts are really research. Like I'm interviewing somebody to learn.
Yeah.
It was turned in like 5 months ago, and it's still waiting for.
About 4 months left.
Yeah. That will be out. It was supposed to be out in August. Hopefully, it's called Understanding Urban Warfare. The book I want to write, though, and I think we could talk about it, is 20 Times I Almost Died.
What if there's more than that?
I wrote down 20 of them.
I was going to say, how do you handle the second half of a career?
Yeah,
that's just in the
pre
9/11 training.
Like you, I'm a different person from when I started the military, and Now I'm a much safer person, but I wrote down 20, and that sounds like a good title to include where.
That actually is a really good title.
Thanks.
I was going to do 21 times I almost died. It's not a big deal. It'll be out shortly after.
I bet you have a lot with the high risk things. I stabbed myself in, so I think you'll appreciate this. So the ear bit off is good because it has a jiu-jitsu lineage to it, right?
Yeah.
I stabbed myself in my eye on accident, like 3 years after that.
How?
Yeah. Well, I'm not ashamed because it's a great story. I was cutting a bottle. Had a nice Benchmade. I think Jack Carr would love it. A nice Benchmade, and I was cutting through, for some reason, a plastic protein bottle in the barracks.
Okay.
And I was cutting towards me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I was talking to somebody or something. It slipped, and the entire knife went right into my right eyeball.
That's a terrible story.
It went so I didn't know if you have 7 layers of your eyeball. It went through all 7 layers of my eyeball, and then my eye started bleeding from the inside out, which I didn't know was possible.
Yeah, I didn't know that was possible either. I wish I had lived the rest of my life not knowing that was possible.
Yeah, it makes my butthole hurt thinking about it.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting reference.
But
I like where your head's at.
it went straight. So the ear bit off changed my military career.
Yeah.
I stabbed myself in the eye. It went through all 7 layers of my eye, and I was scared I was going to get kicked out of the Army.
Oh, for sure.
So I hid it.
Controversial.
So I went to a medic, which I know you've had medics on. You'll appreciate this. I stabbed myself in the eye like, fuck, I can't see. It didn't hurt. Again, didn't hurt. So I went to a medic in the barracks. He turned the light off. He's shining a flashlight. Like, no, you just scratched it, man.
Yeah, it's just a real deep scratch.
Yeah. So I went to the club. I went out that night with the guys. I entered the disco and the smoke and the lights, and I almost went to my knees. Went straight to an ER, I was in Italy, and they're saying crazy stuff in Italian, but this is like on a Friday. They give me steroids for eye shots and say, eventually say, you can go to the doctor. So I have the steroids. On Monday morning, I go to sick call, so I don't feel good. And I went to the doctor. He said, you're bleeding from your eyeball out. And I showed him the medicine I got from the Italians. And he's like, well, that's better than anything I can give you. He said, if that doesn't clear up if it doesn't stop bleeding in 24 hours, I'm evacuating you to Landstuhl, Germany.
Yeah. I
haven't told anybody in my chain of command at this point.
Perfect.
Yeah. And when I went back the next day, I didn't feel good again. I went to sick call again, and it closed. So I never told a single person in my chain of command that I stabbed myself in my shooting eye.
Oh, that's rough. How long did it take the vision to come back?
A couple weeks. So it's almost like I did refractive surgery on myself. So and every time I go for an eye doctor, they're like, this is so cool. And they like look at it with different, because I have it has a 7-layer scar.
Yeah.
But it actually, I don't know if it improved my vision, but it didn't decrease. I didn't have to change glasses or anything.
Let's not even say it improved your vision, because I don't want anybody getting good ideas at home.
Well, you got to know that's what PRK is, right? They actually just slice your eyeball.
Oh, I've had PRK.
Yeah, they just slice it.
Yeah.
And then it reshapes itself.
Yeah. Yeah, but not with a fucking spider co.
That's right.
Yeah.
Benchmade.
Chemicals. They wipe the top of the eye off, and they say, look at this red light. Then you smell your eye burning.
Yep.
They put a contact on, and you can see better.
Yeah, I stabbed myself in the eye. I don't know if that's a good story to tell people, but
I'm going to say it's not a good story to tell people, but I appreciate that you did.
But cut away.
Yeah, son of a bitch. Dude, we've been at almost 3 hours. What do you want to close with? What did we not cover that you wanted to cover?
Man, I'm just a huge fan, and I know people say that all the time, but I've listened to the first episode to the last. It's an honor to be here with you, and thanks for talking about my book.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's a big deal for me. It's a very personal story. I mean, hopefully it's a real story about shit that can happen in combat.
Yeah. Cool. All right, man. Until next time when you have another book coming out.
Thanks, Sam.
Cool. All right.